In this video, I'm going to show you how to build an automated sales pipeline. This video is going to be split into two different parts. Firstly, we're going to go ahead and build a fully custom internal platform, which will act as our CRM, where we're going to be able to track different leads, get a clear overview of the different meetings we're having, specifically for sales calls. This will act as a hub for the different automations we're actually building out in the next stage, which is where we're going to be building out 4 different automations using Make.com from scratch, showing you exactly how you can automate your sales pipeline by doing different things from automatically updating whenever a meeting is booked, automatically following up on your leads, automatically sending you a message to closers whenever a call is finished to actually get them to update a CRM. There's a ton of other things we've been building out, but if any of that sounded interesting, then I can guarantee you're going to love this video. If you don't know who I am, my name's Leo. I'm the CEO and founder of Fluxomate. We help agency owners all over the world set up skill-proof systems. What we're building today is fully custom, so you can tailor it to your specific needs. Like I said, if any of that sounded interesting, then you're going to love this video. And I'm also going to show you how you can take everything we talked about today in the longest video I've actually recorded on this channel and take it to the next level to really automate your whole sales process. This video is already too long, so I don't want to talk too much. If you want a top tip, I recommend putting this on 2x speed to save yourself some time. But apart from that, guys, let's get straight into how you can actually automate your sales platform. All right, guys, so before I go over everything I talked about in the introduction, I want to have a very quick disclaimer. Firstly, everything I'm going to be talking about today is just an example. There's obviously other ways to do this. This is just the one I decided to show you in this video. Secondly, don't focus too much on the tools I'm actually using. Focus on the structure of what I'm actually saying. Like this, you'll get a lot more value from everything I'm saying. So for example, if you're not using the same automation tool as us or the internal platform or anything like that, you can still kind of apply the exact same things I'm talking about to different tools. So focus on a foundation of what I'm actually talking about rather than the actual specific tools. And lastly, enjoy yourself. If you're new to the channel, you'll soon find out we don't hold anything back. So we might as well get straight into it. So the way this video is actually going to be split is going to be in 2 different sections. We have the system building section of it, and then we have the automation side of things. Obviously, we're going to get started with the system build. And for this, we need to actually plan out what we're actually going to be building. So the best way to actually do that is get started with the database. Now, one very important thing that I need to mention is we are going to be starting from scratch. We are going to be using the project management build that we had in a previous video. This is actually quite a popular video. You guys love this. Now, all the stuff that's related to what I'm actually building out today will be completed from scratch. However, we are going to be using this project management tool, which I'll add a screenshot here of what it actually looks like so you can get an idea. Here we already have a couple of databases, from a project database, the task database, and a team members database, and a couple of UI aspects of it already built out. But like I said, everything that's going to be related to specifically the sales side of things, we're going to build from scratch. And that's going to get started with the databases. So before we actually move on to building any sort of front-end systems for our actual internal platform in terms of the sales pipeline side of things, we need to actually build a database for the data. It's very important I actually spend the first 10 minutes or so of this video building this different databases out, because this will actually act as the center of our application. If you don't know what a database is, it basically acts as the backend, and this is where we're going to store all the different data, such as different leads that are coming in, the different meetings we're actually hosting. So in order to actually make it successful, we need to actually create 2 different databases. Firstly is a contact database. Now this is basically going to be different leads. This is where we're going to be storing the information, what specific stage they're in, and different things like that. And then we have a meeting database where we're going to store different information about different meetings we're having. For example, different sales calls, the time they actually are, any joining links, anything like that. Now, usually I would go ahead and actually build out these databases, or at least plan these databases live. But I decided to save some time in this video, and I've already kind of planned out the different databases I'm going to go. So now I'm going to take you through each one of the individual fields. If you don't know what a field is, you can imagine each database like a column and a row. A field is basically a column of data. So for example, for each person, when we track their name will be a field, because that's something we're tracking for every single person. So for the contacts, these are the different fields that I've kind of planned out. Obviously, we might have to change these around depending on what we actually end up building. But so far, I've got the client stages. This is basically going to help us identify whether a specific contact is a lead, an active client, or a lost client. Then we have the sales stages. This is going to take us through the different sales stages that we actually have. I think in this example, we're just going to do active lead, book to call, closed, lost, and follow-up. We have the company name, which is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, the name of the actual lead, the email. Now, the reason this is highlighted is because this is going to be an example of a primary field. The only thing I mean by that, which will come into the automation side of things much later in this video, but it's going to allow us to actually search the leads by their specific email, which is kind of their unique identifier, because it's very unlikely for one lead to have the same email as someone else. Then we have the phone number, the contact stage, the sales stage, which I've already kind of talked about here, the estimated value, the lead score, whether they're qualified or not, whether they didn't show it or not. Their assigned project, which is going to come into tie with the previous database we actually built out. So in terms of the project database, when they actually become closed, we need to go ahead and actually create a project for them as part of the onboarding process. Obviously, just a bit more about sales, but we do need to talk about that slightly. And then the assigned meetings. This brings us very nicely onto the second database we're actually going to be building out in this video, which is the meetings database. Now, if this doesn't make any sense at all and you're just confused about what I'm talking about, skip 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the future and you have a much better idea of us actually building this app together. I like to include as much detail as I can in these videos while still making it beginner friendly, just to give everyone an idea of why I'm actually doing the things I'm doing. Then for the meetings database, which is going to be linked to the contact database because each contact is going to have a meeting. We're going to be tracking the date of the actual meeting, the name of the meeting, which is going to be the event name, basically, what kind of meeting type is, whether it's a team meeting, a sales call, which is going to be much more relevant to what we're talking about here. The duration of the meeting, any assigned employees that actually need to come to that meeting, which once again is going to be linked to our previous project management tool. The assigned contact, which we talked about already, any notes for the meeting, and obviously the meeting link so you can actually go ahead and join it. So those are the two databases we're actually going to be building up. Now, when it comes to no-code internal platform builders, there's a ton of different ways you can actually go ahead and actually build your database, or whether you're using something like Airtable, Google Sheet, or Smart Suite. Most of them actually have connection with these no-code internal tools. For this example, I will use a NoLoco as my internal platform builder, and I'm very satisfied with their own database builder, so I'm not going to be, linking another account to something like Airtable or Smart Suite. I'm just going to build it straight on NoLoco. Obviously, once again, like I said at the start, guys, don't focus too much on the specific tools I'm using. Focus more so on the structure, because you can do this on any sort of no-code app builder. So don't get discouraged if you're not using something like NoLoco. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and actually start building these out on NoLoco. So the first thing we want to do is head over to NoLoco and actually sign up. If you haven't, now I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. However, it's just the one that I use for my team, which is why it's the one I'm actually using in this video. I'm used to it. I've used it for a long time, and we built some really, really cool stuff on this. But once again, don't focus too much on this. You can do this on whatever kind of internal platform you want. So you want to go ahead and actually sign up for NoLoco. Once you're there, you want to go ahead and create a new project, and this is what it's going to look like. Now, if you just sign up, then this should be empty. But like I said, because we're going to base this off the video we did a couple weeks back, which feel free to check out if you haven't already, we already have some stuff already built out. But like I said, anything that's going to be related to the sales side of things, we're going to actually build it up from scratch. So you don't have to worry about missing out anything just yet. So the first thing we want to do is go head over to data. And this is where we're going to be creating our two different tables, which is going to be the contact table and the meeting table. For that, once again, head over to data and then go ahead and start a new source. Now, as you can see, they have a bunch of different integrations from Salesforce, HubSpot, Smart Suite, even Google Sheets if you wanted to. But in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new NoLoco table just to make our life a bit easier. And this one's going to be called contacts. Just like that. So you can already load some pre-fields, but I always like to start from scratch, especially when I'm making these different YouTube videos, to give you a really, really clear idea of everything I'm actually building. So once we're here, we already have some preloaded fields from the ID, the when they're created, last update, and the unique ID identifier, whatever this is called. Now it's time we go through that database I showed you earlier, which you'll find is right here, just as an example. I'm going to go ahead and create each of the individual fields. The first one I'm going to do live with you guys, but the second one I'm going to just speed up just to kind of speed up this already long video. So let's get straight into it, guys. So in order to actually add a field, all you want to do is press this new field button right here, and then we can get started. So the first one's going to be client stages, and for the field type is going to be a single option select. And the different stages that we talked about was lead, active client, and then lost client. We can obviously change this in the future if you have more information to add, but for now I'm just going to leave it as that. Next, we want to talk about the sales stages. Now, for the sales stages, there was, I think, 4 different stages we identified. So I'm going to single option select, and then I'm going to put lead, I'm going to put booked call, I'm going to put follow up, and then I'll put closed and lost. Obviously, once again, we can kind of amend this in the future and add different sales stages, and you could probably edit it depending on the different sales stages you have within your sales process. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as that. And we'll go ahead and add the field. Perfect. So next, we want to talk about the company name. So for that, I want to put company name, just like that. And for the field type, this time is going to be text. And there's going to be a single text. Now, I'm not going to put this as a unique field because we might have different contacts from the same company. We need to be individual fields. So for now, I'm just going to leave it as this. Now we're going to go ahead and actually add the name, which is right there. It's going to be text again, and it's going to be a single text line once again. Now, I'm not going to put this field as unique just because some people may have the same name. Obviously, it's very, very rare. but we don't need it to be unique because the main identifier we're going to have for different contacts is that email, and that right there is going to be a unique field. So let's go ahead and actually add that in now. So we're going to have the new field, and it's going to be email, and then for the field type, you want to go for the text, but this time, rather than having a single line text, we're going to go for email address, and this field is going to be unique, just like that. Perfect. And then we want to go ahead and actually add the phone number. So if you go over here, we'll search for phone number, and for the field type, and if you scroll down, you can see we have phone number right here, and that's just like that. Then we can move on to the actual estimated value. So for that, it's going to be a number, but we're going to make sure it's in the dollar sign, or obviously pounds if you're in the UK like us. So for that, I'm going to go number, integer, and then for the format, it's going to be a currency. And for the currency symbol, we're going to put dollar. Obviously, feel free to change this to whatever currency symbol you actually have. We're not going to allow negative numbers, and this field is not going to be unique. Perfect. Now we're going to talk about the lead score. Now, I think the best ways to do this is scoring your leads on a scale of 1 to 10. Once again, guys, this is going to vary very heavily depending on how you specifically grade your leads, whether it's a number or whether it's kind of different categories. For now, I'm just going to put a scale of 1 to 5 just to make life a bit easier for everyone. But obviously, feel free to change this. So I'm going to put lead score, and then for the field type, I'm going to scroll down to number again. But this time it's going to be a slider. The minimum value is going to be 1, maximum value is going to be 5, and the steps are going to be 1. So basically it means we're going to be allowed to go from 1 to 5 in increments of 1. We're not going to allow negative numbers, and it's not going to be a unique field. Perfect. The next thing we want to actually mark is whether lead is qualified, whether they showed, and the different kind of assigned projects and different things like that. So for this, I'm going to add a new field. I'm going to put qualified, question mark. And then for the field type, if we scroll down, we see Boolean yes or no. This is going to basically mean a checkbox. So when we actually build out the platform side of things, you'll be able to see we can easily just tick if the lead is qualified or not. And we're going to do the exact same thing for no show, just like that. Perfect, and Boolean again. Cool. Now, the only thing we're missing is the assigned project and the assigned meetings. I'm going to do the assigned project now, but for the assigned meetings, I'm going to wait until I actually create the meeting pages because at the moment, I can't actually link it. Both of these fields are linked fields, which basically just means we're linking two databases together. I can do the project one right now because as you can see, the project database does already exist, but I can't do the meeting one right now because the meeting database doesn't exist. So I'll do the project one live for you guys so you can have an idea. I'm just going to go ahead and press new field. And then for this, I'm going to put assigned project. And this is only going to be for leads that are actually closed. So it doesn't matter too much, but I did want to give you guys an example. I'm going to put link to another record. And then this time I'm going to put project, just like that. I'm going to allow link to multiple records. And for what's going to appear on the project side of thing, I'm just going to put contact, just like that. So that's pretty much done. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing for the meeting database. Now I am going to speed this up just so you don't have to sit here and be bored with all the different things I'm doing. So feel free to actually slow it down to 0.5 or however much I sped it up if you want to see what I'm actually doing. But for now, let's just go straight into it and just create the meeting quickly so we can actually move on to creating a UI and the interactive component of this application for the sales pipeline. Alright guys, as you can see, we've gone ahead and created that meeting database with a lot of different fields. So now that that's all done, it's time for us to actually go ahead and fill in this data. Now we're dealing with a lot of different fields here. I think we have about 15 or so in the contact one and then maybe about 8 or something in the meeting one. So it will take me a long time to kind of go in and fill in all the different examples so you have some data to actually play around with. So instead, I'm just going to use ChatGPT. Now this is very, very simple. All you want to do is basically go with ChatGPT, give it all of the different columns or fields that you actually have and ask it to actually generate data. Once that's done, we can actually go ahead and import the data automatically. Once again, guys, this is very simple. I am going to go ahead and actually speed this up so you don't have to be bored and watching me, and you can get straight to the value of us actually building this platform together and the different automations. If you do want to watch me do this, once again, I'm going to include it in. I'm just going to speed it up, so feel free to slow down the video so you can actually watch along. But for now, let's go ahead and actually generate these fields so then we can actually move on to the next step and actually build the system. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've gone ahead and actually imported all of our data. There are some aspects that are missing, such as the client stages and the sales stages. Let's see, and the lead score maybe, but there's nothing we can't fix after we actually go ahead and actually clean up our application. And the exact same thing for meetings. This is all AI generated. I mean, can you imagine if I kind of went through and created each one of these individually? We would have been in probably for half an hour. So That's one of the benefits of AI. You can save a lot of time. But now that we've gone ahead and actually completed all the database side of things, it's time we move on to the system build. This is probably the thing that most of you guys are actually waiting for realistically. So you might as well get into it. So our current application right now has 3 different user roles, 2 of which are internal and 1 of which are external. In terms of internal roles, which are just roles basically are different employees, at the moment we have admin access and editor access. In terms of the sales side of things, obviously editors will not be involved, so we're just going to be focused on the admin access. And if you're wondering why this logo is here, I think this was a case study for bad marketing when we did the initial product. So yeah, we're going to be focused on the admin side of things. Obviously, the client has to go nowhere near the sales side of things. So we're just going to be creating this to actually create our sales pipeline. So there's 2 main sections we're going to be building out. First is going to be a sales pipeline, and the second one's going to be a meeting kind of overview. Within the sales pipeline, we're going to have a sales breakdown. This is going to be a page where we just have a summary of everything that's going on in terms of sales. We're going to have a lead page just so we can see all the leads clearly, kind of in a Kanban board. We're going to have all the sales calls in one place, and then we're also going to have a follow-up board. So it's very, very easy for the admins or even one of your closers, for example, to come in and just follow up with different leads. We're also going to have a meeting overview. The first page is going to be a meeting breakdown, which is similar to the sales breakdown. We're going to have different information about who the actual meeting. Then we're going to have upcoming meetings and past meetings. Nothing too complicated, guys. I mean, as you'll see when we're building out this application, there's so much you can actually do when it comes to no-code internal applications. The possibilities are literally infinite. So for now, we're just going to be putting this all together and showing you a very, very beginner friendly of how you can actually structure an automated sales pipeline. Don't forget, guys, once this is all built out, we're going to go ahead and build out 4 live automations for you guys and also showing you how you can actually take this to the next level. But for now, let's go over to Noloco and actually continue making this system build. All right, guys, so we're back in Noloco, which is obviously the app builder we're going to be using. So like I said, we do already have some pages built out from our previous step, but none of these are going to be relevant to the new stuff we're actually doing. So if you just think of these as completely separate, we're not going to be editing any of these. So we're just going to go ahead and create new sections. So the first thing I want to do is add a little divider so we can actually split it between these sections. So for this, I'm going to go over to this plus button right here, go to advanced, and then press a little divider right at the bottom. This is just going to allow us to separate the different things. So the first thing we actually need to do is going to work on the sales side of things. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and add a folder. This is basically going to host all of our sales stuff. I'm going to call this sales breakdown. Now, a first page in that sales breakdown is going to be the sales breakdown or the sales overview, whatever you want to actually call it. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and add another page. And this one's just going to be a blank page because here we're going to summarize a bunch of information so that admin can actually just log in, see all the information about sales straight away without having been interrupted or anything like that. So for this, I'm going to get that blank page and I'm just going to drag and drop it into the folder so everything's kind of together. And now if I open up, the first page that we actually see is our sales breakdown. Within the sales breakdown, I also want to show different leads. So for that, I'm going to go to contact, because that's going to be a database view. And once again, I'm just going to drag and drop that within the sales breakdown. And then I'm also going to show meetings. Now, the reason I'm showing meetings in particular is because I want to show sales calls. So this is going to show every single meeting, just every single meeting that's actually a sales call. And then the last thing I want to do is actually the follow-up calendar. So for that, I'm just going to add the contact base again. And then once we actually add the follow-up date, it'll be very easy to have a clear overview of when the follow-up dates actually are. So that's pretty much it for the sales breakdown. Now let's just do the exact same thing for the meeting breakdown. So once again, I'm just going to add another folder. I'm going to be calling this the meeting overview or meeting breakdown. We'll keep the same thing. And then once we're here, I'm just going to do a very, very similar approach. Firstly, I'm going to add a blank page. That's going to be the overview of all the different meeting information. So an admin can easily kind of have an overview of what's actually going on without opening individual pages. Then we're going to have 2 meeting tabs just like that. Perfect. Now, obviously, guys, there's a lot more you can do with this. Like I said a second ago, before we actually started the build, ideally, if you have different closers, you'd have a whole other section for them where they can see their specific meetings and everything like that. But I'm going to talk about all the ways to actually improve this once we finish the build and the automation side of things at the end of the video, just to give you an idea of the actual things you can do with an internal platform like this. So we kind of have our navigation laid out. I'm just going to go ahead and actually change this icon because we don't want 2 folders. So for sales, I'm going to put, let's see if they have some sort of money icon here. We'll go for this one for now. And then for meetings, let's see if they have some sort of calendar icon. They have a ton. We're just going to go for this one. Perfect, guys. Our app already looks much, much better. Now, if you go ahead and actually navigate these different pages, you see the first page we open is the blank pages as soon as we actually load this up. This is on purpose. Now, before I actually go ahead and edit different blank pages, I'm going to work on the sub pages first. because it will be a bit easier once we have the data to kind of visualize all the different data we actually need to put together in one place. So for that, I'm going to go over to contacts, and this is going to be our lead overview pages. So there's a couple of things we want to change. First things first, we don't want a table. This is very, very ugly and hard to kind of consume all the different data. The best way to do it for leads to kind of see the specific still stage they're actually in, we want to go to board, and this will give us a nice little Kanban board with the different stages that the lead is actually in. Now, you can see if we go to grouping, at the moment it's grouping it by the client stages, but we don't want that. We want to only group it by the sales stage, just like that. At the moment there's no data because we're going to have to clean it up, but this is much, much cleaner. Another thing we actually need to do is, at the moment, this is going to show every single contact, which is going to include clients, everything like that. We don't really want that. We only want to include contacts that are actually within the sales cycle. So for that, I'm going to add a relative filter, and I'm going to put all. And for the field, sorry, it's going to be client stage is equal to, and then we're going to turn off the dynamic mode and just put lead. So now it's going to show us only contacts which are actually in the lead stage. In this example is none, but I'm just going to go quickly clean up the database so we actually have some examples, and then you'll see all the different contacts actually coming in. So as you can see, guys, now we actually have some leads coming in. It's not really in order, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to general and just reorganize it so it's first to last. That should clean things up a bit. So we have lead, booked call, follow-up, closed, and lost. Now, I am mindful of having closed and lost as their own individual fields, so I'm just going to go ahead and go like this. And now just to hide it, we are going to have a section within the actual overview page that's going to show these 3 different stages, so don't worry. But I think it makes much cleaner just to have a clear pipeline, because close and lost can very, very easily get stacked over time. So cool, we have lead, booked call, follow-up. Once again, guys, obviously feel free to kind of incorporate the different sales stages that you actually have. In order to do that, you want to go back to the database, and where we actually created the different sales stages, add in whatever stage you have. So for example, if you have a 3 call close or even a 2 call close, you can go ahead and add first call booked, second call booked, third call booked, so on and so forth. Or even if you have a proposal stage, you can go ahead and actually add that. There's so much you can actually do. This is just the only thing I'm doing today. Now, at the moment, this is very, very messy. We don't need to show all these different information within the lead card. So for this, I'm going to go over to fields, and I'm going to start hiding some information. So for the client stage, I'm going to hide. For the sales stage, I'm going to hide as well because we have it right here. The company name, I'm going to leave. The name, I'm going to leave. The email, I'm going to leave. The phone number, I'm going to leave as well. I'm going to leave the estimated value. I'll leave the lead score, but I'm going to hide whether they're qualified and no show, because there's not much need to actually hide that information. Even this is looking quite clunky, so I'm actually going to go ahead and hide the phone number, and we'll leave it as that for now. I think it looks much better. Now, the main kind of field we want is the name. So there's a bunch of different things you can do in terms of kind of formatting it properly. But for this example, I'm just going to go over and actually make it a heading 4, just to make it stand out a bit more. And I'm also going to hide the label because we know that's a name. You know, that's the first thing we're actually going to see. Now, for the different fields, there's a bunch of different things we can also do. Now, I'm actually going to go ahead and hide the lead score because most of it is empty anyways. But I want to show you different ways you can actually format or kind of filter these specific fields. So let's say for some people, right, estimated value is not going to be relevant if it doesn't exist. All we have to do is go over to estimated value, only show when certain conditions are met. And if we go down here, we can go to contacts, scroll down to estimated value, and then put is not empty. So now it's only going to show the estimated value when it's not empty. And obviously for all of these V's, they do have an estimated value, but let's say they didn't, then it wouldn't show up an empty estimated value, just to make it everything a bit more streamlined. So if you go with options, there's a ton of more other things we can actually do, from adding different buttons, even different record colors, different fields, and we're going to do all of that today. So let's get started with the fields. Firstly, at the moment, it's just showing me every single lead we actually have. But for example, I can add different fields that only show me, I don't know, leads with a certain lead score, leads that are actually qualified, or even only leads that actually have a meeting that's actually been assigned. You know, there's so many options of what you can actually do here. For example, if I go here and I only want to show leads that are qualified, I don't think any of them are actually marked right now, but it only shows me leads that are qualified within our actual sales pipeline. Another thing you can do, which is going to be very, very useful when we actually talk about the automations in the second part of this video, but is adding these different record buttons. I am going to add 2 to show you an idea. I want to make it very, very clear that we're going to be developing these a lot more on the automation side of things and doing a bunch of different things when it comes to follow-ups and kind of initiating our onboarding process. But for now, I just want to set up the infrastructure to actually allow us to do that in the next stage. So I'm going to go over to this section right here where it shows the record buttons, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. This one is going to be our closed button. So basically, whenever we press this, it's going to mark a lead as closed. I'm going to change the appearance to green. and I'm going to make it a module button. The difference between a module or model, sorry, and a one-click button is that one click is very self-explanatory. As soon as you press it, the action happens. But when it comes to a module button, first they kind of ask you for confirmation. So in this case, because we're going to be triggering an onboarding sequence, I'd always recommend having a module button just to make sure the lead hasn't accidentally pressed that button. So in terms of the module section, we can add, are you sure you want to mark this lead as closed? And then we can add a short description saying this will initiate the onboarding sequence, just like that. And then if you go to actions, this is part of what we're going to be doing automation. But once again, it's going to be a much more developed when we actually go to the actual automation stage. But for now, I'm just going to put update a record, and I'm just going to update a record that's actually been assigned to the close stage. So just like that. And then I go to sales stage, I go to default, and I just turn off dynamic value and enter closed. So now if we exit the kind of builder mode of this program, you can see we have this nice little close button right here. And if I go ahead and press this, it's going to ask me for confirmation. And then if I press confirm, it's going to go ahead and move that actual lead to the close section. Now, once again, we are going to develop in these a lot more when we go to the automation side of things. I just want to show you an example of different buttons we can actually set up. I'm going to create two more buttons, one to actually follow up and one to mark the lead as lost. So let's go ahead and actually do that. If we go back to builder mode, and to make my life easier, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this button and edit it for the lost one. So I'm just going to change it to lost. I'm going to change this to danger. I'm just going to edit this so it kind of makes sense in the context of it being lost rather than closed. Go ahead and delete that. And the only thing I need to change realistically, and if I go over to update a record, this record, I'm going to change the sales stage. So rather than it updating to closed, I want it to update to lost, just like that. Now, this particular thing, I'm setting it as a hidden value, which basically means it's going to automatically change the loss. But if I wanted to, I could also put it as an input field, which basically gives the person that's actually confirming the button a chance to kind of choose when they actually do that. You'll see what I mean in a second when we go to the follow-up stage. We're going to actually allow them to use a follow-up date. But for now, I'm just going to keep it a hidden value just to make my life a bit easier. Cool. So as you can see now, we have the lost and close button. So let's go ahead and add the last button, which is the follow-up button. Once again, guys, we are going to be developing a lot more when it actually comes to the automation side of things. But for now, if you go to record buttons, we're going to add one more, and this one's going to be follow up, just like that. The color, we can make it orange. This is going to be a module button. Now, this one, instead of being a module, we're going to put one click. And then for the actions, we also want to update a record. However, this time, it's not going to be a default section. We're going to give them an option to actually choose a follow-up date. So we're going to choose a follow-up date field, which doesn't look what we actually set up. So if you go back to our database to actually amend that, add a new field, and this is going to be follow-up date. And then for the actual field type, it's going to be a date. I'm going to put date and time using consistent time zone. Perfect. So now if you go back to application, and we go back over here to actually update the feed for the follow-up section. We go ahead and find the follow-up date, which is all the way at the bottom right here. And now we can give them an option to actually edit that follow-up date by changing this to input field. Now they can actually go ahead and choose that specific date. You can also kind of filter it to give them specific options, for example, in a week or something like that. But I'm happy with this. I'm just going to leave it for now and just give you an idea of what this actually looks like. Let's say I wanted to follow up with this lead. It goes ahead and shows me the follow-up date, which I can actually select, and that will automatically update the lead to show us that specific follow-up date. Perfect. Cool, guys. So I'm happy with this right now. We set up the different filters. We set up the different buttons in terms of automatic follow-up, mark the leads as lost, and also mark the leads as closed. I'm happy with this now. The next thing I actually want to do is edit the pages. So at the moment, if I press any single one of these, it will take me to this page, which is basically the lead page. Now, this is a bit of a mess at the moment. We have a bunch of information that we don't really care about. So I'm just going to clean this up, and this will basically act as our lead pages for every single one of the other pages. So let's go ahead and actually edit this. The first thing I want to do, I don't mind leaving the kind of client stage here, but rather than it being a client stage, I'm going to change this to sales stage, which will be a bit more useful. So now it's very easy for me as an admin or whoever, even a closer, to come in and update the lead to the different stages just like that. Very simple. I do like this kind of highlighter field here at the moment, but let's show some actual valuable information. So we're going to put the estimated value 100%. We're going to put the lead score 100%. We're also going to put when the lead was actually created to give us an idea of how long the sales cycle has been so far. And if you scroll down, we can also show different things, such as whether the lead was qualified or not, which we will. So if we go over here, let's kind of organize this so it all fits together in one clean bar, just like that. And then for the qualified field, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to highlight this field based on condition. So if they are qualified, I'm going to leave it as green by just going green and then put contacts. And if scroll down to qualified, I'm going to put is true, but I'm going to put it as red if the contact qualified is false. Just like that, guys. Obviously, there's a ton of other things you can do with kind of the record buttons. I just want to give you some examples. So this is our lead page so far. Still a lot to do, but we're making good progress. The next thing I want to change is this kind of mess of different information. It's not really necessary. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and close this. For the assigned project, I'm also only going to show this if there actually is an assigned project. In order to do that, I'm just going to go to visibility, custom rules. I'm going to create a new rule where the contacts and then scroll down to assign project, and then I can choose the ID is not empty. So now it's only going to show this if the contact actually has an assigned project, which should only be when the contact is actually closed. Let's add another section to add in the lead notes. So for this, I'm going to add a details section. And if I go over to fields, I can scroll down till I see notes, which we haven't actually set up, a bit disappointing. So let's go back to our database. And for contacts, we're going to add the notes field. I did say, guys, we won't build in a database and we might have to edit it when we're actually building it. So this is an example of us kind of improvising on the fly. So I'm going to format and I'll change this to long text. Perfect. So now if I go back to my application and I go back to the details section, I should be able to add the notes just like that. Perfect. So I'm going to change this to full length because I want to make it nice and big. And for this, I'm going to enable inline editing, which basically means I can edit it without having to press this edit button. And then for the form input options, just to make it a bit cleaner, I'm going to make it the rich text editor, which looks much nicer in my opinion. So this is basically where you include any lead notes. So I'm going to go ahead and actually rename this to lead notes. So for example, if on a sales call they mention a certain thing that is important to them, I don't know, for example, a stupid example is them having a pet. You go ahead and very easy write this down, any information so it can be shared across the lead, and anyone that actually interacts with this contact in the future has that information there. So a couple of things I do want to change. Firstly, is going to be I want to add the company name here somewhere. So in order to actually do this, I might go ahead and just change this lead score here. So I'm going to hide it, and instead I'm going to add the company name just by moving it up here. And instead I'm going to add the lead score in a tab below. So for that, I'm just going to go over to the record view. I'm going to add a details tab, move up. And for this here, I'm going to add the lead score, whether they were qualified and whether they were no-show. Now, the reason I'm adding it here rather than anywhere else is very simple. And sorry, I'm also going to add a follow update. Now, the reason I'm adding it here rather than a highlight field, you'll see in a second, because I want to make this very, very easy for the closer or the admin to actually access while they're live on a sales call. So for this, I'm going to go over and head this. And for all of these, I'm going to enable inline editing. So just by enabling this button right here. So now you can see for every single one of these, it's very, very easy for the person who's actually managing this lead to come in and edit specific information. So for example, let's say I want a sales call with Hernandez or however you say that. I can easily come ahead and affect the lead score. I can easily select it if they're qualified or not. I can easily select if they showed up or not. I can easily select a follow-up date just like that. The last thing I actually want to change here is I'm going to add the actual meeting if they have one. So similar to a assigned project, I can actually go ahead and just copy this straight away. And for the assigned project, I go over to general, and rather than the project database, I want to make the meetings database, but I don't want to show every single meeting. I only want to show the meetings that are actually assigned to this lead. So for that, I'm going to go over to options, and for the relative filter, I'm going to put meetings collections. So now it's only going to show me the meetings that are actually assigned to the specific lead. Now, if they don't have any, we don't want to show this. So before I actually do that, let me just quickly change this to assigned meetings. And then for the visibility, I'm going to do a similar thing that we did for the project ID, but rather than an assigned project, I'm going to scroll down and choose the assigned meeting collection is not empty. Perfect, just like that. So super, super happy with this so far. We have a much better understanding of who this lead actually is. A couple more things I want to add. Firstly is the record buttons. Now, these are going to be very, very similar to the buttons I actually added in this page right here. So the follow-up, lost, and closed. So for that, I'm going to go edit. I'm going to press any random ones, and we can actually go ahead and get those added. So as you can see, they're already here. So for us to actually add it is very, very easy. All I have to do is turn them on. And now I can actually show you how this works. If we were to mark this lead as closed, it's automatically going to move it to the closed stage. And it's very, very easy, once again, for the admin or the closer to come in and edit the different information. Cool, guys. Very, very happy with this. The only thing I want to add now is different tabs. So within this platform, in the different pages, you can also add tabs. So for example, here, there's one tab here and then a second tab here, which at the moment is empty. This is going to be my edits tab. So for that, I'm going to add a detail field, and then I'm just going to add every single field that you can actually edit. just by literally just copy and paste it. This is going to be somewhere for the closer or the admin to edit information about the lead, such as the email, the phone number, the estimated value, the lead score, whether they're qualified or not, the no-show, assigned projects, assigned meetings, follow-up dates, or even the notes. So just to give you an idea how this would look like in action, we have all this information here. For me to come edit it, it's just I have to press this edit button and now I can edit this information super easily. Perfect, guys. And if I'm done, I can just go ahead and press done. Cool, guys. I'm very happy with this. Let's go ahead and just rename this tab to the edit tab, just like that. And now I'm very happy with all the progress we've made. The only thing I'm considering adding is different buttons to automatically call or email the lead. But I think for now, I'm going to leave it. I'm happy with this. Let's move on to the next section, which is actually creating the meeting page. This is going to be an overview specifically for sales calls because we're in the sales breakdown section right now. So if we go to meetings right now, as you can see, it's just a list of every single meeting, which we don't really want. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and set up a filter similar to what I've done already. I want to put all, and I really want to show calls that are actually sales calls. So for the filter, I'm going to select the field of meeting type. I'm going to put is equal to, and then I'm going to turn off dynamic value and choose sales calls. So now it's only going to show me the calls that are actually sales. Now at the moment, the database isn't updated, but if I go quickly to the database and I go over to meetings, and then for the meeting type, I just select a bunch of different sales calls, just like that. As you can see, guys, I just assigned a bunch of them to sales calls. And if I go back to the meeting side of things, within the application, you should be able to see every single sales call here. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this kind of board view, especially when it comes to calls. So I'm just going to change this to a calendar. So for that, I'm going to go with the general, and then I'm going to change this to a calendar view. A very important here, you actually need to select the start date, which in this case is the day of the actual meeting. And as you can see now, we have our calls coming in. I'm going to group them by the meeting type. And just like that, we have an overview of every single sales calls. They are kind of spread out a bit. But if I want to go to the July, I can have a clear overview of all of those once it loads. And if I wanted to open up any one of these, it's just as simple as going over here and open, and then it'll take me to the actual meeting page, which we have to set up. But you get the idea. Cool, guys. So I'm very happy with what we covered so far. Just to kind of recap, so far we created a contacts page, which I should actually rename to leads, just to make life a bit easier to understand for you guys. So I'm going to rename this to the leads page. Within the actual leads page, we also created the individual lead pages, which look a bit like this, where you can see the specific meetings that they have in, the lead notes, everything like that. We also went ahead and started this meeting page, which shows basically every single meeting. Now, I am a bit conscious of leaving this as a calendar rather than a card view, just because we are going to have a calendar for meetings here, and then we're also going to have a calendar for follow-ups. So I think what I'm going to do instead within the sales breakdown, rather than having it as a calendar for different calls, I'm going to go ahead and change this to a card view, and then I'm going to actually organize it by most recent, so the one that's actually coming up the soonest. So for that, I'm going to leave the grouping as meeting type, but we don't have to show team call, client call. For grouping, I'm going to go ahead and remove that because we know every single one of them here is actually sales calls. But the only thing I need to do is if I go over to options and I go to sorting, I'm going to make it so that the day it shows me the newest ones first, just like that. Very happy with this so far, guys. Let's go ahead and clean this up. So similar to what we did for the lead side of things, we don't need to see every single one of these information. It's a bit claustrophobic and there's too much going on. So we're going to start hiding some of these stuff. The date will leave because that's quite important, to be honest. The meeting name will leave. Meeting type, we know every single one of these is a sales call, so we can actually hide it. We are going to leave the duration here. The notes we're going to leave. The meeting link we're actually going to keep, and we're going to keep the assigned employee and the assigned contact. But we can still clean this up a bit more. So firstly, for the meeting link, I'm going to go ahead and change this. And rather than having a link, I'm going to make it a button, right? So I'm going to put join now. And now you see how easy it is for someone to just come in here and automatically join the sales meeting that they're actually assigned to. Very cool, guys. Obviously, you can also make it as an image if you wanted to, which I don't know why you would, or even a link, and then you can just press that and just join. But I'll leave it as that. I'm going to go ahead and move the label as well and move this to the bottom so it just looks a bit cleaner. Let me change this back to button and then just move it all the way to the button. Now, we also see two different fields, the assigned employee and assigned contact. Now, when it comes to a sales call, there should always be an assigned employee and assigned contact. But just in case there isn't, I don't like these ugly little two lines here. So for that, I'm going to go to assigned employee, and similar to what I did in the release side of things, I'm only going to show this when an assigned employee actually exists for the meetings. So I'm going to go to meetings, scroll down to assigned employee, choose ID. I'm going to put is not empty. So now it's only going to show us that particular field if there actually is an assigned employee. And I'll do the exact same thing for the assigned contact, only show when conditions are met. And I'm going to choose meeting, scroll down to assigned contact, select the ID, and I'm going to put is not empty. Once again, the whole purpose of that is just to clean this up a bit. Let's go ahead and do something similar for the meeting name. I'm going to move it to the top, and I'm actually going to change this to make it a bit bigger to actually see. So for that, I'm going to go over and choose heading 4, just so it's a bit clearer. I'm going to leave that meeting name and the date just to make it very, very clear on when this meeting actually is. But I'm very, very happy with this. So far, this has been quite cool. Let's go ahead and add some filters to this to make it a bit easier. The first filter I'm actually going to add, and we can do that just by going over to options, is for the actual employee. So let's say you have different admins taking different sales calls. Honestly, this is not really built for that. It's more meant to be if you're taking different sales calls. But let's say you do, it's very easy for you to filter by different employees just by choosing this. And because there's no employees assigned right now, it's not going to work. But let's say there's a bunch of different employees assigned to different contacts. It's very, very easy to you to actually choose a specific call. The next filter I actually want to add is the date. This just allows to filter the sales calls by different dates that are actually happening. Now, if you did want to change this, it's very, very easy to use for you to actually put this just as a calendar. It's up to preference at the end of the day. You still have all that information here. You can still join now. But just because we're going to do a bunch of different calendars in the meeting breakdown side of things and a contacts as well for the follow-up date, I'm just going to leave it as this because I think it's slightly cleaner. There are also different options you can do, such as columns, rows, I don't know, grids if you want to do as well. But we'll leave it as cards for now. Obviously, feel free to change this when you actually start building this out, or if you're building this out live with me on your specific kind of requirements. Cool, guys. So whilst we're here, rather than moving on to another section, we might as well go ahead and create the different pages similar to what we did for the lead side of things. So for that, we're just going to click on any one of these random pages. And now, once again, we're greeted by a hot mess of information which don't really care about. So I'm actually going to go ahead and remove this section right here, which is the information about the specific sales call, because it's not really relevant. So let's go ahead and delete this. I'm going to keep this highlight field, and here I'm going to include a couple of other things rather than a date. I am going to include the meeting type. We're going to come in particularly relevant in a second when we move on to the meeting page. Remember, this is going to be our meeting page for every single type of meeting, not just the sales meetings. You could change that, but I'm just going to be a bit lazy in this occasion and make this page for every single meeting. I'm also going to put the duration as one of the highlights, as well as the meeting link. So it's very, very easy for someone to just automatically join. You know, we want to make it as easy as possible for the users to actually use, which is why we're spending time doing these things just to make it life a lot easier. So we're going to leave the date as that. We'll leave the meeting type there. Duration, I'm happy with as well. But the only thing I want to change is for the meeting link. If you go all the way over here, I am also going to change this as a button. Once again, I just want to make it very, very easy for the person to actually join the meeting. So I'm going to put join now, and I'm going to open that in a new tab. So let's say they come in, they will actually want to join this meeting. All they have to do is press this, and it'll take them to a new tab. Obviously, it's a random tab, which doesn't exist. But when we actually set up the automation side of things, you'll see how we're actually going to automatically bring in these leads as part of the automation. So make sure you watch until the end for that. The next thing I want to do is organize this a bit. So at the moment, it's showing us assign employees and assign contacts, which I'm definitely not against, but I just want to clean up a bit more. There's no need for the assigned employee to take up a whole kind of section, especially because in most cases there'll only be one person. Same exact thing for the contacts. And once again, I don't want to show it if it doesn't exist. So the first thing I'm going to do is head over to visibility. And similar to what I've done for a lot of these different pages, I only want to show it if an assigned employee actually exists. So I'm going to go over to meetings, scroll down to assigned employee, choose the ID, and then for the operator, I'm going to put is not empty. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing for the assigned contact, just create a new custom rule in the visibility section where the assigned contact ID is not empty. Cool. So that's definitely some progress. The next thing I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be splitting these sections into 50-50, I'm going to go ahead and put everything in one container. So for that, I'm just going to go over to record view. I'm going to choose container, and I'm going to move this all the way to the top, just like that. Gonna have to fiddle with it a bit. And then I'm going to add every single one of these fields within a container section. So just drag and drop. Now, the containers are going to play a massive role when it comes to the blank pages and organizing different data. Usually, I don't have to use them within the actual record pages, but if we're splitting something, it will look a lot cleaner than just us splitting it halfway through, because then if you don't go to the container, it'll go all the way to the left side, which ideally we don't really want. So now let's go ahead and move this so it only takes up 50% of the page, and then we'll do the exact same thing as the assigned contact, so it's kind of next side by side. Cool, very happy with that. And within these pages, there's one more thing I want to change. At the moment, if we press this, it's going to give us the option to actually create a new employee, which we don't really want, because here it's not a section for us to create employees. Rather than actually creating new employees, I want to give us an option to assign new employees. So for that, rather than creating new employees, I'm going to go over to options, and for the buttons, I'm going to turn off show new record buttons, but I'm going to enable edit related records. So here I can basically add different employees. So as you can see, it's not giving me an option to create employees, but I can automatically add an employee, and it's going to bring up all the information here. I'm going to do the exact same thing for contact. So once again, I'm going to go over to options, and then I'm going to enable edit related records. Now, in this instance, because it's a contact, in some cases, there might already be a contact created rather than employee. So I'm going to leave the actual option to show new records. But as you can see, it's also very easy for me to actually choose an existing member just like that. And another cool thing here, if you go over to the actual options for the employees, I can also unlink specific people. So for example, here, if I don't want to link employee 3 anymore, I can just go ahead and unlink him and then go ahead and choose someone else. Very cool, guys. This looks much cleaner. Let's go ahead and actually clean up these record pages because, for example, if I add an employee, there's a bunch of information which, once again, we don't really care about. So I'm going to go over to fields and I'm going to hide most of this information. I'm just going to leave the name, the department they're actually in, the role. I'm going to take away the assigned project, comments, but I am going to leave. But if I go over to user, I should actually be able to import a profile picture just like that. I think I'll make things much nicer. Again, I put a face to a name. And then for the profile picture, I'm going to go and leave it as a circle image. Cool, guys. Let's do a similar thing for assigned contact. Once again, we don't really care about every single one of the informations, but the real things that we really care about is the sales stage, the actual name, the email, and most importantly, the estimated value, the qualified, and no-show. For this, we're going to enable inline editing because similar to the one other thing, we want to make it very easy for the admins to actually edit this information. I just realized you can't see what I'm actually doing, so let me choose a random lead just to give you an idea. These are the different fields we actually have. At the moment, it's displaying as a card. We don't really want that, so let's go ahead and just change that quickly to a row. Yeah, we'll do a row. Or let's do a column actually. So for that, we're going to go ahead and change that to a row. And then we're going to hide the empty groups and take away the grouping actually. Perfect. And as you can see, guys, the reason I actually turn on the inline editing, and now I'm just going to go ahead and actually turn on the inline editing for the fields that we actually easily want to edit. So for example, where they're qualified and no-show and stuff like the lead score, just like that. And enable in editing. So now as an admin, which once again is probably the most important part of this whole thing, within the actual page, it's very easy for me to actually play around with this, edit the toggle and different things like that. You know, very easy for me to actually do that. Now, a cool thing you just saw right there, if I go ahead and actually press this to say I want to have more information about the lead, it just takes me straight to the lead page we created in the previous step and I can see a lot more information there. Cool, guys. So I think we made quite good progress. Let's see if there's anything else I want to add to this lead page. I do want to add another tab so it's clear to see whether there's an assigned employee or not. Now, looking back on it, if you go over here, there's nowhere for us to easily assign employees. So I'm actually going to get rid of that rule we created where it only shows it if it exists, because I don't think there's any needs, right? It's not taking too much space. I don't think it's kind of overwhelming the user. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these two different functions. So just like that, it's very easy for me to actually assign different employees just with a click of a button, just to make my life a bit easier. I am just going to add that edit tab that I added in the previous lead page. Once again, I always like to add these just as very easy for the user to actually edit any relevant information. So I'm going to go over to tab 2. I'm going to change this to edit. And then once again, within that tab, I'm just going to add a details section and add every single one of the fields that we can actually edit. So it's very easy for an admin or any other users to actually edit information about specific meetings if they have to. Cool, guys. Very happy with this so far. The only thing I will change here, rather than put in a bunch of different information which is not really relevant, I'm going to change this to include the meeting notes, just like that. And I'm going to do a similar thing that I did with the lead, where I'm going to make this full page. I'm going to enable inline editing, and then for the form input options, I am going to change this to the rich text auditor so it makes life a lot easier. So if we open this up, we have a clear indication of the date, what type of meeting it is, the duration, a meeting link we can easily just join, and different notes, and as well as different employees which can automatically link new people and assign different contacts. A cool thing I want to show you about the functionality of this app, once again, the whole purpose of this is to give you different examples of where you can actually incorporate these different functionality in your business. So I'm going to add in a cool little button, which is called a notice. And I only want to show this notice if the meeting has already happened. So for that, I'm going to go to options. I'm going to change the appearance to a success. And for the title, I'm going to put this meeting has already happened, just like that. Now, the key thing here is for visibility. I'm only going to show this if the meeting date is past today's date. So for that, I'm going to go with the visibility. I'm going to add a custom rule, similar to what we've done before. And then for the data, I'm going to go ahead and choose the meeting date. So far, I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and move to the last part of this, which is showing us the follow-up board. So at the moment, this is showing us every single lead, which in all honesty, we don't really care about. Here, the whole purpose of this is to show us the different dates that we actually need to follow up on. So two different filters I'm going to add. Firstly, we don't want to show anyone that has the sales stage of either closed or lost. So for that, I'm going to put is not equal to or is not one of. So we can add a couple of fields, turn off dynamic value, and then choose closed and lost. The second thing we also want to show here is all the leads that are actually in the follow-up stage. As part of the automation we'll build in a second, we're going to be automatically updating this, so it's going to make life a bit easier. So for this, I'm going to add another and filter. So for the field, I'm going to scroll down to the sales stage. I'm going to put is equal to follow-up stage. And, kind of looking back, if we put is equal to follow-up stage, we don't necessarily have to add this because it's only going to show us the follow-up stage regardless. And the last filter I want to add is a follow-up date actually exists. So for that, I'm going to select the field follow-up date all the way down here. I'm going to put is not empty. So now it's going to show us only the records where the follow-up date is actually not empty. Now it doesn't exist for some of these. So if I go back to my database and I go over to contacts and I add some follow-up dates for the specific meetings. So we have this one right here, add a follow-up date 17th. So if we go back to our application now, you can see we have two different records because these are the only two ones that are in a sales stage and actually have a follow-up date. So the last thing I want to do is change this to a calendar just to make it very, very easy for the person seeing this to kind of see when they actually need to follow up. So I'm going to go over to calendar. For the start date, I'm going to put follow-up date. And the only thing I want to do here is actually group it by the specific sales stage that they're actually in. Now, all of them are going to be the follow-up stages. Doesn't matter too much, but it has that kind of greenish color. And lastly, rather than showing a whole month for you, I'm going to leave it as a week just because we only care about follow-ups. So this week, we don't actually have any. But if we go over to next week, you can see we have that follow-up for Peterson right there. Cool, guys. Now, we've already gone ahead and created a lead pages, so I don't want this to link to another lead page, which we haven't really edited. So rather than opening a new page for the actual leads, if we go over to options and we go over on click, we're going to change it so it opens up the actual leads page. So now, for example, if we go back to that same record I just clicked a second ago, rather than taking us to a brand new page we have edited to take us to this nice page we created earlier, which is part of the lead section. I am just going to go over here and hide the breadcrumbs just to make it a bit easier for the user to actually navigate through this and they don't get confused and go back to leads by accident rather than going back to the follow-up calendar. And I'm also going to rename this to follow-up calendar or follow-up central, just to make it a bit nicer. I'm also going to rename the page here as well as hiding the breadcrumbs. Once again, I just want to make this a bit cleaner and clear on what the purpose of this page actually is. So for the title, I'm going to put follow-up central and just like that. Very, very cool. Now, once again, here you can add new contacts, but I don't really care much about adding new contacts specifically on this page. So rather than adding new contacts, if I go over to options and I see this show new record button, I'm just going to disable it because there's not really much functionality. If you want to add new contacts, we can go over to the lead pages. Cool, guys. So the last thing we have to do is just clean up the different fields. As you can see, we have a bunch of information here which we don't necessarily care about. So let's go ahead and actually clean this up. If we go to the fields and we open this up, so we have reference, I'll hide the client stages. I'm going to hide the sales stage because everyone here is in a follow-up stage. I'm going to leave the company name. I'll leave the name. I'll leave the email and the phone number. So it's very easy for them to actually follow up if they wanted to just by pressing it. I'm going to leave the estimated value. I'm going to leave the lead score. And I'm going to hide whether they're qualified or no show because it's not extremely relevant. If they didn't want to see it, they can just open up the actual page as well as the lead score. The only thing I do want to add here is the follow-up date, which actually already exists there, so we don't really care about too much about it. Perfect, guys. I'm very, very happy with this. The only thing I'm going to try to do is going to put quick copy to clipboard, so it's very, very easy to actually copy that email and the phone number if they have to. But for example, if I go over here, I can just press this and then it'll open up application. Even if on my phone, it can open up the phone app with that number already tapped out. Same thing for the email. If I go ahead and press this, it opens up my email. So it's very, very easy for me to actually follow up with this lead within this page. And then once again, guys, just to reiterate, if I go ahead and press the open page, it takes us to this nice leads page that we actually created earlier. Now, I could optionally also add the different record buttons that we added a second ago in order to make it closed and lost straight here. But honestly, guys, I think you can have a clear understanding of how those work already. And I don't want to spend too much time boring you with different things like that because we still have a lot to build in terms of the automations and also the meeting side of things and also the empty pages. So we might as well crack on with it. Okay, guys, so let's kind of overview what we have for our sales breakdown so far. We have the empty page, which we're actually going to build out next. We have the leads, which shows out every single one of the leads with these different cool buttons that do different things. For example, if I move it to the follow-up, I can go ahead and choose a follow-up date. Just like that, and that will automatically move it to our follow-up central. We have the different meetings, which shows every single meeting we have with a cool button we can press right here to automatically join, as well as different assigned contacts and assigned employees. And then we have the follow-up central, which shows us every single kind of follow-up that we actually need to do for our different leads. If we open up any of these pages, for example, the lead page, we can also see a bunch of more information about the lead, such as the stage, the value, the company name, whether they no-showed, whether they were qualified, and we can also edit the lead score just by going like that. Same exact thing for the meeting side of things. If I open up any single one of these, I can see a bunch more information about the meetings. I can automatically assign employees just by assigning them just like that. And the same exact thing for contacts. I can just go ahead and do that. And also edit information. If I go ahead and press any of these, I can just go straight to the lead page to see much more information as well as there's different assigned meetings. Now I want to go ahead and create the blank page. Now the whole purpose of this page is kind of have a clear overview of sales. So here we're going to show different sales calls, some summary graphs, all the different leads we recently closed, some leads that we recently lost, and some key kit sales stats. So let's go ahead and actually build this. So when it comes to creating these kind of dashboards, the first thing I like to do is add a title. This kind of makes it very, very clear on what this page actually is. So for example, this page is a sales breakdown. So let's go ahead and actually get started editing that. I'm going to go over to options, and for the title, I'm going to put it as a sales breakdown. And honestly, guys, I've got some good experience with this because I've actually been doing this all week for a client of ours. So we can also add an image if we wanted to, or a cover photo. But for now, we're going to leave it as that. The next thing I want to do is add a container. Now, like I said to you earlier when we kind of used the container the first time, containers are going to be a massive role in everything that we're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a container, set it to 25% because this is where I'm going to put a bunch of different graphs. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing, but this time the width is going to be 75%. I'm kind of splitting on the page because when we have different graphs, we don't want it to take up a bunch of different space for no reason. So for now, this is quite ideal. All right, guys. So just to give you an idea of what this blank page actually is, if you go to projects, you can see I kind of created one last time. We have some cool different diagrams on the side, some of the top projects here, and a different timeline. We're going to probably do a bit more advanced version. We'll see how much time we actually have. But let's actually start building it. So firstly, here I want to display a bunch of different graphs. So for that, I'm going to go over and add in this specific container different charts. Now, within a specific application, which is Noloco, there's a bunch of different graphs you can actually type. So for example, if you go to charts and I go ahead and select, there's a bunch of different options from area charts, bar charts, funnel charts, gauge charts. I mean, the possibilities are literally endless. Usually what I like to do is show some key statistics first. So usually I do about 2 of these, and then under that I add a much bigger chart to have a clear breakdown. In this example, because we're kind of, it is a funnel when it comes to sales, I'm going to add a funnel chart just like that. And for the option colors, I'm going to make it something a bit more vibrant so it's a bit nicer to look at rather than black and white. Now, as you can see at the moment, this doesn't make any sense, just a bunch of different numbers, but don't worry, we're actually going to go ahead and configure that right now. So first thing I'm going to do is head over to the first chart, and for the statistic I want to show, you can see we have a bunch of different options. In this case, I just want to show the estimated value in our pipeline right now. So that is a bit cramped, but if you go ahead and actually exit it, you can see it's much cleaner. So don't worry about it being too cramped, especially when you're editing it. Now, at the moment, this is going to show us our total estimated value, which in all honesty, I don't really care about. I only want to see the active value of my pipeline. So for this, I'm going to go over to charts. And for options, I'm going to set up a relative filter that only shows us data that is not closed and is not lost. The only reason I'm doing this is because I really care about my active pipeline, and I'm going to head and add labels there to make it really, really clear to the user. But I think this is going to clean up data a lot more. So if I go to sales stages, I'm going to put is not one of, and then I'm going to select closed or lost. So now this is going to show us our active value. So leads that are either in the lead stage, the follow-up stage, and the booked call stage. Cool. So we got the number there. I'm also going to head and change this to make sure this is a sum. So it just adds everything together. Perfect. Now I'm going to do a similar thing for the second one, which is going to be another statistic. But in this example, I just want to show or count how many leads we actually have. So for this, rather than summary, I'm going to put count, and that's going to just show us the different leads we actually have in the pipeline. And lastly, for this actual graph, which at the moment is a big mess, I'm going to change the x-axis value to sales stage, and then rather than summary, once I'm going to put count, and then for the series, I'm going to go over here and then choose the ID as the actual y-axis value. So now we have kind of a funnel chart of the stages of different leads are actually in. So we have 7 in the lead stage, 1 in the book call stage, and 3 in the follow-up stage. Now, first thing I want to do, like I said, is add a label to this to make it clear this is our active pipeline value. So if I go over to general, I'm going to add a label or title that says active funnel value. What a cool thing you can actually do with these charts is also add different filters. So for example, if I go over here back to options and I scroll down to different filter fields, I can also filter this by the actual created date. So for example, if I wanted to see leads that are happening or different things from leads that actually got created this week, I can go ahead and press that, and now it will only show me that relevant information. Just an example, obviously, but quite a cool indication of how these different filters can actually work. Cool, guys. So I'm quite happy with this so far. Let's go ahead and edit this section right here. Now, I think the best way to do this is adding 2 different fields, 2 different collections, sorry. One of them for collections of leads who are actually closed, and one of them for collections of leads who are actually lost. Because nowhere else on this page do we have a clear indication of which leads are lost, or a clear area where we can see every single lead that we lost. So for this, for the list type, I'm going to choose contacts again, because that's where our leads are actually hosted. And rather than choosing rows in this time, I'm going to choose a column, which is just basically drag and drop. And the only thing I'm going to change here is go over to options, add a relative filter that only shows leads that are in the closed stage. So I'm going to put select a field. And if I scroll down to sales stages, I'm going to put is equal to closed. Now, because every single lead here is going to be closed, I also want to make it very, very clear. So for that, I'm going to scroll down and choose a record button. And in this case, it's going to be green. Just because, once again, every single lead here is lost, you might as well celebrate. Now, you can also add a title here. So we can put, just to make it very, very clear to the user, closed leads. And then I'm also going to sort this by most recently updated. I'm also going to hide this new record button because, once again, there's no need to include it here. And that's pretty much it. Now you can have a clear overview of every single lead that's actually been closed, as well as the different stages, the company name, and the email if you wanted to. Now, because every single one of the leads are closed, they should also have an assigned project. So I will clean it up just a bit more. If I scroll down and add the assigned project, which it should have, and we're going to make sure they have when we actually set up the automation. But now you can have a clear overview of the actual lead. I'm going to move the name over to the top. Make it a bit bigger so it's a bit clearer, as well as hiding the label. Similar to the way they for other pages, guys. There's nothing new. And just like that, we have all the different closed leads. Now I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this for lost leads. So I'm just going to actually duplicate this just to make my life a bit easier. So turn out a bit of a mess. Let me just reorganize this just like that. And this time, rather than it being closed leads, we're going to change the filter so it only shows leads that are actually lost. I think it's important to have a record of these leads because it's very, very easy to actually regain these leads in the future. So having a clear indication of where they are and an easy place to actually access them will make life much easier. So do you think I want to change it for the record button rather than green? We'll make it red because these are lost leads. It's not a good thing. And I'm also going to change the label just to make it very, very clear these are actually lost leads. Perfect, guys. Now, none of these will have an assigned project as well. So for the field, I'm going to go ahead and assign or hide the assigned project base, but I'm going to show the estimated value just to give us an idea of, how much the lead is potentially worth. Cool, guys. So at the moment, this is looking much better, but I have a big empty space here that I want to fill in because I don't want to leave this nice and empty. So I think I can either add some upcoming sales calls or some stats about sales calls. So for this, I'm going to add another collection within that container we created earlier, which is 25% container. And I'm going to go over to charts again. And in the chart section, rather than choosing contacts this time, I'm going to choose meetings. This is going to basically be an overview of the different sales meetings we're actually having. So if we go over to charts, we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to add those two little boxes, which are statistics. And I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate that to get two of them. And then I'm going to add one big chart at the end, very, very similar to what we did over here. So let's go over to the big chart first. And for the big chart, I think we might leave it as a line chart to get a good indication of the amount of sales calls we're actually having within any given period. So I'm going to go over to line chart, make this form. And for the x-axis value, I'm actually going to choose the meeting date. Now, as you see in a second, I'm actually going to group this by month. It's basically going to sum up the different sales calls that we're having every single month. So if I go to time period, I'm going to put group by month, and then I'm going to put count. And then once again, for the series, I go over here and choose ID. So now it's going to show us the different sales calls we're having every single month. Once again, it is a bit cramped, but once we kind of put it in full screen, it'll look much cleaner. I'm also going to change the colors once again, just to make it a bit more vibrant and easier to actually on the eye rather than just black. So now let's go back up and edit these different fields. There's a bunch of different fields we can actually show. Let's say we just want to show the number of actual meetings we're actually having. I'm going to go to statistic, and this is going to be the ID. I'm going to put count. And that's pretty much it. So we're going to have 21 sales calls. And this is I'm going to label this as sales calls and just going to add it right there. And I'm actually going to leave it as 4 because I don't have another number to actually add here. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the top one right here just by deleting this. Perfect, guys. So now we have a summary of our different sales calls. We have a summary of our funnel, all the different active leads we actually have, and the different closed leads and lost leads. I will say, guys, there's a ton of more things you can do here, but just because I'm a bit pressed for time and I don't want to make this video too long, I think so far we're probably already half an hour, maybe even an hour in. I'm just going to keep on going with it. And now let's go over to the meeting side of things to edit the different meeting pages. Just a quick reminder, guys, after this, we're going to go ahead and set up 4 different automations to actually automate your sales funnel. At the moment, we're just basically set up the backend to actually give us all the tools to actually be able to host these automations in a platform that's easier for the different admins to actually edit. So let's go over to the meeting breakdown and start working this out. I'm going to leave the blank page to last, similar to what I did last time. The first thing I want to show is upcoming meetings. This is basically going to show every single meeting that's in the future. Firstly, I don't want to show a board. I want to show a calendar. Like I said, the reason I was kind of moving away from showing the calendars on the sales call side of things is because we're going to have a bunch more calendars in these different pages. So just to make my life a bit easier, I left it as a card view. In this example, it's very, very important to put a calendar just to make it very, very clear. And for the start date, once again, I'm just going to put a date. And now this is going to show us every single type of sales call. So I do want to group it by the meeting type so we can have an idea of which sales calls is what and what they're actually related to. I'm going to leave this as a monthly view because we should have a lot of different calls coming in. But one thing I want to do here, this is going to show us every single meeting. In the next page, we're going to filter it back so it only shows us previous meetings. So one thing I do want to change though, if I go over to options, once again, we don't want this to lead to a brand new page that we actually edited. So rather than us bringing it to a random page, if we go over to edit and we choose the general, rather than opening a new page on click, we're going to go back to that meetings page that we created the first time right there. So let's see if this actually works out. We should have a nice clean page, which is the page we actually edited. Perfect. Now, this is meant to be the sales page, but it's still going to apply to different meetings. In all honesty, if you want being lazy like me and kind of pressed for time, I'd create two separate pages, one specifically for sales and then one specifically for different types of meetings. Because, for example, assigned contacts might not exist for team meetings, so there's no need to actually show this information. But just because we're a bit pressed for time, we're just going to leave it as that. But I do want to add some couple of different things. The first thing I want to add is different filters to this page. Obviously, in this example, we only have 2 meetings this month. But if you're using this as a team for every single one of the meetings, this is easily going to fill up the 50 plus meetings every single month in terms of your sales calls, your client calls, your team calls. So it's important you actually add some different filters. So for that, I'm going to go over to options and I'm going to scroll down to the filter fields. And here we're going to add a bunch of different options. So firstly, we're going to filter it by the meeting type. We're going to filter it by their assigned employee, and then we're going to filter it by their assigned contact. Because remember, at the moment, right, the assigned contacts is only leads. But in reality is that a contact is going to act as leads, but also as your active clients. So if you wanted to actually filter it by a specific client, all you have to do is go over to assigned contact, and it'll be just like that. You could also optionally filter it by assigned project if we did have the project field within the meetings, but for now we don't, so we're just going to leave it as that. I'm very happy with the progress we made so far. Let's go ahead and actually edit these fields because once again, we don't need to have all this information here. So I'm going to go over to edit, and if I go over to the field section, let's go ahead and hide this information. We're going to hide the date and the meeting name because that's already included at the top right here, just like that. We're going to leave the meeting type, we'll leave the duration. We're going to hide the notes because if it can get quite lengthy and you don't want it to take too much space. I'm going to leave the meeting link and the assigned employee and assigned contact. But once again, I'm just going to show this if it actually exists. So for that, I'm going to go to meetings, assign employee, ID. I'm going to put is not empty. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing for the assigned contacts, just so it doesn't show an empty row line if it doesn't exist. So meetings, scroll down to assign contact, ID, and I put is not empty. So if we go up on the field page, as you can see, this is looking much cleaner. We also have that meeting link right here. I'm going to change that to join now button just to make it very easy for someone to actually come in. I don't know if you can do, guys. At the moment, we just have a link for the actual meeting. But let's say you actually store your recordings on an online platform like Zoom, for example. As soon as a recording comes in, you can also add it to your database, and rather than have a join now button, you can have a view now button, which takes you straight to the meeting URL. There's a bunch of different ways you can configure this app. The cool thing about internal tools, which is why I think they're the perfect agency software, and I've done a whole video about this if you want to check out in the top right hand corner, but it's fully customizable to your specific needs. So for example, if you wanted this to look a different way or you wanted to add some different functionality, you can. Whether if you use a normal project manageable like ClickUp or Notion even, for example, I know a lot of agencies are actually using that, you're quite limited in what you can actually do. Not when custom internal tools like NoLoco. Cool guys, I'm quite happy with this page. Let's move on to the last stage, which is going to show us past meetings. So I'm just going to go over and edit this. So it shows us past meetings. And in all honesty, I don't want a calendar view for every single past meeting because it can get quite chaotic. So let's go ahead and change this. Rather than a table, I'm actually going to leave it as a column, I believe. Or actually, no, we'll leave it as a table. Or a grid, actually. I think we'll leave it as a grid just to make it nice and simple. And the key thing here is we want to sort it by date, newest to oldest. And then if we go to fields or to options, sorry, we're going to add a filter that only shows past meetings. In order to actually do that, we're going to put and then we're going to choose that meeting date just like that. And then I'm going to put is before or equal to, and then I'm going to put relative date, today's date, now. So now it's only going to show us meetings that actually happened before today's date. Because once again, it's just a collection of different past meetings. Now, I am going to group this just to make it a bit easier for the user to actually identify different meetings just by going over here to grouping and grouping it by the meeting type. And once again, we're going to do a very similar thing that we did last time in the meetings page. We're going to add a bunch of different filters because over time, this is going to get stacked. I mean, if you're talking about every single meeting you've ever had. So we want to actually group it by going over to filter fields and add different filters such as the meeting type, the specific date if you're looking for a particular field, and also their assigned employee. Why not? I'd also want to change the fields because once again, I never like including notes fields because it can get quick, chaotic, and quite lengthy. So I always try to hide that. The meeting link doesn't really apply here because these are past meetings, so it's not like you're joining them at any point. I'm going to leave the assigned employee and assigned contact because that might be useful. But apart from that, we can go ahead and leave it as that. Cool, guys. So now within this kind of meetings page, we have an overview of all the different meetings. Now, once again, this does apply to the sales side of things because sales meetings are meetings, but I didn't want to just create the sales page without creating this meeting page. So for now, I'm just going to leave this as that. Let's have a quick overview of all the different things we've actually done. And let me actually just rename this to make it a bit cleaner rather than page 21. I'm going to put sales breakdown overview. Hey guys, Leo from the future here. Just a quick little detour from wherever it is you're watching. I'm happy to announce that we just released our brand new community. But this will be a community for different agency owners who are looking to set up different skill-proof systems. Within the community, if you go up to the classroom section, you can see we've already preloaded every single resource from our different YouTube videos, and this is just going to keep growing and growing. For example, if you want some of the different automation blueprints, the templates, or any other resources from the video you're watching right now, you can check out the first link in the description to join the community and get access to this classroom where we have all the different resources from all the different YouTube videos. We also have a couple of cool things in here, such as different unlocks at different levels. But the key part of this is that I want to create a place where any of you guys can just ask me different questions and communicate directly with my team, where I can also share insights on things that are currently working within our partners' agencies. As with everything else that we do, this is a 100% free community. I'm not charging you a single penny for this. It's just a way for me to provide even more value, what we're already doing with all the different YouTube videos. I don't want to say too much, guys. All the information can be found in the description. It also is a public group, so before joining, you can have a look around the different conversations that are going on and the different things that are available. If you think this is something that is interest to you, please go ahead and actually check out the first link in the description to join. And I'm sure I'll catch you inside the community, guys. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this community growing and becoming the biggest place for agency owners who are actually looking to set up skill-proof systems. I'll let you get back to the video now. Thanks. I'll see you inside. Bye bye. Cool, guys. So very, very quick run through before we move on to the automations. First things first, we have a sales breakdown or a sales overview. This gives us an indication of every single lead we ever closed, as well as every single lead we've actually lost. And if you actually go ahead and press this page, it takes us to a page where we have much more information about the lead, where we can edit their lead score, whether they're qualified or not, the follow-up date, any notes about the lead, and also add the information just by going to this tab. We also have some cool record buttons, which I'll come to in a second. But if you go back to this page, we also have some cool different graphs. This shows us the kind of value of the leads in our pipeline, all the different leads we actually have within our pipeline. And here we have a clear overview of those leads and the different stages they're actually in. Here we have a count of all the different sales calls, which are broken down by monthly. And you can add different filters right here, such as filter it by a specific date. You can add a bunch of more information here. This is another example of something that we did for projects in the previous video on the project management platform. The whole point of this page is to have a clear overview of your sales side of things. So these are just examples. Feel free to change this any way you want. When we go to the leads page, we have a board which shows us the different lead stages. Here we also added different filters so you can filter by lead score, whether they're qualified or not, or even if they have a meeting already existing. As you can see, we also created different record buttons. So this follow-up button allows us to actually set up follow-up date. This lost button actually moves it automatically to the lost stage, and this close button right here automatically moves it to the lost stage. Like I said, we are going to be enhancing this much further when we actually move on to the automation side of things and creating 4 different automations to tie these buttons together. But for now, we kind of set up, just have the infrastructure. If we click up any of these, we can also edit it just like that. But if you click any of these, we can see more information about the lead, such as a specific stage they're in, their lead score, similar to what I showed you last time. And once again, we have these buttons in the top right-hand corner, so we can easily just mark this lead as closed, and just like that, it's going to be moved to closed. In the meeting side of things, this shows specifically our sales calls. So here we have a bunch of different information about the different calls, and if you press this button right here, we can automatically join using a meeting link for that specific meeting. If we have different filters here, so you can filter by assigned employee or even a specific date the meeting is actually in. And if you press this, we can see much more information about the meeting, such as the date, the meeting type, the duration, and obviously we have that join now link. Here we can take any notes about the meeting just by going over just like that. And then these 2 little cool sections right here, we can automatically unassign different employees or choose different employees to actually assign to this specific meeting. And the exact same thing goes for contacts, so assign a specific leads. And here we can actually edit information about the contact, or even we can see more information just by pressing this button, and it'll take us straight to the contact page. And the last thing we have is the follow-up central. This basically shows the different follow-ups we actually need to do. We filtered it so it only shows up leads that are actually in a follow-up stage with an existing follow-up date. If I go ahead and press this, I can see more information about the lead, and I can automatically follow up just by pressing this button. And if on my phone, it'll take me straight to the phone application, or just by pressing this button so I can automatically email the lead when the actual specific date is in. Once again, if I open this, I can see more information about the lead. In terms of the meeting breakdown, we also created 2 different pages. One page that shows every single meeting that we're actually having, once again with different filters for the meeting type, the assigned employee, the assigned contact, and one page that shows us every single meeting in the past, which once again has different filters for the different types of meetings. If we go ahead and actually open up any of these pages, it takes us to a page where we see more information about the meeting. Cool, guys. So I know I kind of ran through that quick summary, but if you're watching this, you kind of saw us build it out together. Now it's time to actually move on to the automation side of things. Now, I know you're probably wondering, Leo, why did you actually spend so much time building a system? And the reason is quite simple. This will basically act as the backend for every single type of automations. When it comes to creating different automations, which are a bit more complicated and span over a longer time horizon, it's very, very important to have some sort of internal platform. Obviously, what I showed you today is a bit more complicated, and you could definitely get away with using something like Google Sheets to do this on a much simpler level. But I wanted to show you something that was somewhat scale proof and that you can actually copy and paste straight into your agency, which is why I actually took time to actually build out this internal platform before we moved on to any of the automations. The next stage, we're actually going to build out automations to basically support our sales pipeline and literally automate it. And after that, I'm also going to show you how to actually take it to the next level using different things and enhancing the internal platform and the automations. So make sure you watch until the end for all that information. Let's get straight into the different automations we're going to be building out for this specific sales pipeline. Cool, guys. So now that we've actually built out the internal platform, it's time to actually move on to the automation side of things. By the way, I know the camera wasn't working for the last section, but I'm back now. So hopefully it should actually keep on working until the end of this video. So we're going to be building out 4 different automations, and the whole purpose of this is literally just to automate the sales process. Now, I'm going to be taking heavy inspiration from this video right here, which basically showed the perfect sales process from an operational perspective. So this is where inspiration from a lot of these automations are actually going to be coming from. Obviously, I'm going to go as in depth because this video is already quite long. So if you want me to explain any part of this, please just make sure you get a time tag, drop a comment below, and I'll make sure to have a much deeper explanation. But for now, this is the 4 automations we'll be building out. Let's get straight into the first one. So the purpose of the first automations is very, very simple. Within our internal platform, we created a section which is for meetings. The purpose of this automation right here is just to make sure that those meetings are actually regularly updated. If you didn't have an automation and you were manually entering the data for each and every single meeting that you had within your internal platform, then realistically it wouldn't keep up to date. And there's no purpose of setting something up if it's actually not going to be up to date, because then you're not going to use it. So this automation is basically going to trigger whenever a call is booked on Calendly or any sort of booking software you're actually using. Then if they're qualified, we're going to go ahead and update the database by creating a lead firstly, and then also creating a sales call. We're also going to research the lead, send an email to them, kind of to warm up, and also send a Slack message to our closers just to keep them updated and let them know that the new call has actually been booked. If they're unqualified, we're going to go ahead and actually cancel that meeting and also send them an email, letting them know why the meeting was cancelled. So let's go ahead and actually build this. Now, I will say to get started with this, you need an automation tool. In this example, I'm going to be using make.com. Honestly, guys, it doesn't really matter. You can use make.com, Zapier. Like I said, don't focus too much on the exact tools I'm using. Focus more so on the structure of and how I'm actually kind of putting a frameworks for these automations. With that being said, let's get straight into make.com and get started with building this automation out. All right, guys, so I've just launched the make.com app I use for my different automations or YouTube automations, I guess. And what we want to do is in the homepage, go over to create a new scenario, and this is where the magic is actually going to start. So, like I said, the trigger for those automations is going to be very, very simple. We basically want it to trigger every single time a meeting is booked, but more particularly a sales call. So, for this, we're going to go over and search for Calendly. Perfect. And there's a bunch of different options. The main thing we want is just watch events, which once again just triggers whenever a meeting is updated. So, for this, we're going to go ahead and create a webhook. And you can see right here, I've got my already have my connection. But if you don't, you can just simply press add, press save, and then you can go ahead and just log into your Calendly account just by entering the different details. It is quite simple. It's nothing too complicated. But in this example, I already have the connection, so I'll probably leave it like that. For events, you want to go invitee created. You can do different things when the invitee is cancelled, which is one of the ways we're actually going to level this up in the second stage or the third stage story after we actually build the automations. But in this example, we're going to go invitee created. For the organization, we're just gonna choose your organizational URI, which will be automatically just there. And that's pretty much it. As well as choosing user URI if you have different users, which in this case is just me. I'm gonna go ahead and press save, and now we can move on to the next step. Now, the problem with this specific trigger is that it's gonna trigger for every single call that you're actually having, which you don't really want. When we actually advance this and we make it not just a sales automation, but an automation for different sales system, then it's going to be valuable. But for now, we're going to go ahead and just add a router. This is basically going to allow us to control our flow a bit. So for example, if it's a sales call, we can go down this path, and if it's a team call, we can go down this path. Because remember, this automation at the moment is just updating for sales calls, but ideally in the future, I'd use this automation to update for your team calls, your client calls, everything. Just have a clear overview of every single meeting that's coming in. But for now, we're just going to focus on the sales side of things. So we're going to set up a filter here, and for the label, if you go to condition and we go to the event section right here, we can make sure the text operator is equal to sales example. Now, if I open up Calendly, you understand why I'm actually doing this. Within my Calendly, I've got a bunch of different events, but one of the events and the event we're actually going to be treating as a sales call for this video is a sales example YouTube. This is why when you're actually naming your events on Calendly, it's important you actually have unique names for each of the different things. So in this example, this is a sales call that we're actually been using for this video. Obviously, if your sales calls within Calendly or your booking software are called something different, then you're going to have to adjust for that. So for example, if your call is called a demonstration call, then obviously you'd have to change it so it only passes if it contains demonstration within the title. But for this example, because we're using sales calls, I can set up the trigger so that the event operator, and then I'm going to scroll down to contains, and I'm going to put sales example because that's each one of my sales calls. The other paths, like I said, you have to set up when you actually do different things like your client meetings. But for now, this is kind of the route that we're going to be preparing for this automation. Now, once that's done, we've identified that this basically comes in for every single sales call. Now it's time to actually do the first step, which is creating our lead within our database. So for that, I'm going to press a plus button. And before I do that, actually, as you guys saw, when we actually built the platform, the software we were actually using, it was NoLoco. That's the software we actually need to connect to make.com in order to actually make this work. So for that, I'm going to press plus, and then for the apps, I'm going to search for NoLoco, which is just a platform I use for the no-code internal tools. Obviously, feel free to use whatever platform you actually use. And we're going to go ahead and actually get this connected. So the action is going to be create a record. And here we're going to have to go ahead and update on the local connection because this is something we used for another video. So we're going to go ahead and press add, and we just have to copy and paste the port API key and account API key, which you can find if we go back to our internal platform and we go over to settings. When we scroll down to integration and API keys, we can find them right here. So I'm just going to copy this one and paste that right in, and just do the exact same thing for the account API key and just paste that right in. I'll press save, and that's basically our collection done. Now we're going to see every single collection that we actually built out so far. The key thing we want is just the contacts, because firstly we actually want to go ahead and create a lead, and here we can see all the different kind of fields that we actually laid out. So let's go ahead and actually fill these in one by one. Firstly, the client stage is going to be lead. The sales stage right now is going to be booked call, because remember, this is being triggered every single time someone books a call. The company name, I think, is one of the questions that we actually asked them. If you scroll down to questions and answers, so it's not one of the questions we actually asked them, so we're going to leave it blank. And then for the name, we can just enter that straight like that. For the email, we're going to get that straight from the email of the actual invitee. For the estimated value, we're going to leave that empty. The lead score, we're going to leave that empty. Now, one thing I would recommend adding in, if you're actually doing this properly, is some sort of automation or prompt, I guess, within ChatGPT, which passes information over, as well as the research that we actually do from a lead and kind of generates a lead score for the lead. But for now, we're just going to leave that blank. Qualified or not, we're going to leave that blank. No show, not, we're going to leave that blank. The assigned project, we're going to leave that blank. Follow-up date, we're going to leave that blank. And notes, we're also going to leave that back. Now, we could optionally add the different kind of details about the lead from the questions they actually answered. So for example, if I wanted to add, I don't know, what are your goals? I can go ahead and add that here, and now actually give us the answer. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. I'm happy with this. Now let's just go ahead and do the exact same thing, but this time, rather than creating a lead, we're going to do this for a meeting. So I'm going to add another module, and this time it's going to be again NoLoco. I'm going to create a record, and if we scroll down to collection, this time rather than contacts, we're going to go for meetings. So here, as you can see, we have a bunch of information to actually add in. So let's go ahead and actually do that. Firstly, the date. We can get that just by scrolling down to the start time, which is right here. For the meeting name, once again, we can get that from the event, which is annoyingly so within kind of a URL. However, if you go over here, we will see the name, which is formatted a bit nicer for us. And what I actually do, rather than put an event here, I'm just going to change that to the name of that actual event, just to make it a bit cleaner and make sure the filter actually works as it should. For the meeting type, this is going to be a sales call, once again, because we've set up a filter that only allows us to go through 4 sales calls. And then for the duration, we can actually go ahead and add that in. If we go down to one of these fields, I know they track it within the API. So I guess they don't have within API. So for now, we're just going to leave that blank. And the last thing we actually want to include is the meeting link, which is right here where we have the join URL. Now, one very, very important thing you actually need to do is assign the contacts, because we want the contact to be linked in an actual sales call. So for that, we're going to go to assign contact. And here we want to enter the steps from this, which don't exist right now because I haven't actually run the module. But if I go test this with test user, I put the email testing at gmail.com, and we run this, it's going to go ahead and create a user. So I should be able to just automatically link it. So it's gone ahead and deleted everything. But once again, if I go to user, I can go ahead and assign it just by connecting that UUID right there. Or even the ID, actually. I think that'll probably be better. That's what they're asking for. I think the ID will actually be better because that's actually what they're asking for. So I can just go ahead and enter that right there. Let me just go through this in quickly. I'm going to speed it up so you don't have to watch me do this again. Now, that's gone ahead and done. The only thing I do want to change is add an assigned employee. Now, if you have a lot of employees taking sales calls, kind of going to round robin, then you can also automatically assign it. All you have to do is add a step before this to find that employee based on an email. In this example, it's going to be one person every single time. So I can just go ahead and choose myself from that user database. So for example, this time I can put employee 5. Let's say that's the person that's actually taking these sales calls. Perfect. So we've gone ahead and actually created a contact. Now we've also gone ahead and created a meeting. Happy with the progress so far. Let's move on to the next step, which is actually researching the lead. Now, there's a ton of different ways to actually research your lead, and this is actually something I recommend doing before the step if you're doing it properly, so you can automatically score the lead and kind of add any information in a notes section of the lead. But for now, we're just going to leave this. The way you would actually do it is just by adding a module right here, connecting ChatGPT. Well, this is one of the ways to do it. Obviously, there are different examples, but the probably easy way to do it is just connect ChatGPT or any sort of AI platform that you want to use and basically add all the information from a lead website, the actual questions they're actually asking. I actually have done a video showing you how to do this, but specifically with Perplexity AI, so you can automatically kind of grab their website and research what they actually do. So if you want to check out this video right here. So for this example, I'm just going to leave it. But if you're doing this properly, you have to follow this specific automation right here, where you basically use Perplexity AI and also the answers to the different questions that we asked in the form to scrape all of the different information and put it together, generating a lead score and also kind of a summary for your closes. But for now, we're just going to leave that. Now let's move on to the next step, which is basically sending a confirmation email. For that, I'm going to scroll down and look for Gmail. Obviously, you can use whatever email platform you'd like. But within Gmail, I can go ahead and scroll down to actually send the email. I say this all the time, but if you aren't too confident with user automation, then go ahead. You can also save a draft if you like, but because there's nothing kind of AI generated, you can just go ahead and straight to generate that email or send that email, I should say. So I just need to go ahead and reconnect my account just by adding add, sign in with Google and just signing in. So now that my new account is actually connected, I can go ahead and send this email. This is basically going to be a confirmation email. Now, if you watch this video right here, I know guys, there's a lot of different videos to refer to, but I kind of showed you how you can actually nurture your leads with a specific lead magnet, which will warm them up, but also collect information using a form. I'm literally just going to copy and paste that email here. If you want more context on how that actually works, check out this video. It'll give you a lot more kind of idea of how to actually do this properly. But for the email, we're going to scroll down once again to the email of the actual invitee and just paste it here. The subject is going to be meeting confirmed. Obviously, this is not a copywriting masterclass, so feel free not to copy this. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it. And then if we grab them, I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that right in. One thing I always say when you're actually sending information or emails, I should say, through any sort of automation, I always recommend sending it as a HTML because the format looks a lot cleaner and sometimes you can kind of go ahead and mess it up. But for this example, we're just going to leave it. The only thing we need to change it is by changing the invitee name, again, straight from him. And then if you go over to the actual date, we also need to import that straight from the automation so they have a clear idea of what email they're actually getting. So if we scroll down and we find the start time, we just copy and paste that straight in. So this is just basically your onboarding email, and all we're doing here is just confirming a call and then also kind of sending them to a specific form where you can use something like a lead magnet to warm up, but also collect different information. Once again, if you want more information on that, you can check out the video linked in the description where we basically run you through another automation build similar to this first automation in particular, not the other three, to show you how you can automatically warm up your leads and also collect information from them before a sales call. But cool, guys. The last thing that we have to do now after we actually send that confirmation email is just to send a message on Slack to our closers. So for that, I'm going to add another module, and this time I'm going to search for Slack. Perfect. And there's a bunch of different things you can do, whether you have a channel for your closers or you have one closer you want to send a direct message to. In this example, I'm just going to send a channel message. So I'm going to put create a message, and I've got my Slack bot right here. And if I go for the channel name, I can select from list and I'll choose my closer channel, which in this example will be my testing channel. And for the text, I'm just going to say new sales call book. And then here I'm going to link the actual name of the lead just by going over there to name. I'll also include the actual start time, which is right here. And the last thing I actually want to add is the link to the particular lead so the closer can get more information on them. So in order to do that, I've got the UUID right here. And if you have a look back on our internal platform and we go to application, I'll actually show you the nav bar in this example, and we open up any one of these leads, we can see this URL. The only difference we have here is having that UUID right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this URL, go back to make.com, and I'm just going to replace the UUID with the UUID from the actual record or the lead we created, and just send a quick message saying more information here. Perfect. I'm also not going to put a nice little emoji, format it a bit, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, once again, when sending messages through Slack, I always recommend going through blocks rather than text because you can do a lot more and add different buttons and everything like that. But just with the aim of keeping this as beginner friendly as possible, we're not going to go ahead and do that. But one thing we will do is change the actual icon username. So we're going to put sales bot, and then for the emoji, we're going to put robot underscore face. Perfect. So if you go ahead and actually test this out, just to get an idea of what it actually looks like and make sure everything's working properly. For the name, we're going to put Ronald Donald. The start time is going to be, we'll put tomorrow. And the UID is going to be this one right here from a record we just created, just to make sure the link actually works. Perfect. So that should go ahead and send a message. And if I go ahead and open up Slack within my testing channel, you can see from that sales bot, we have the message which we have basically says we have a new call booked in. This is the event information and more information here. And if you press this particular link, it's loaded up over here, but it'll take us straight to that particular record page that we just created as part of the automation, keeping everything kind of streamlined and very, very easy for the closer to get more information about the particular lead. And guys, that's pretty much it for the first automation. Like I said, I didn't include the kind of research side of things because I've done a whole nother video on that. But what I will do is include all the relevant templates in the digital product that you can find using the first link in the description. There you'll get access to every single template that I'm using within this video, along from the different resources, such as the different databases. Literally just any resource that we actually use in this video, you'll find all in this one digital product. And the best part, it's 100% free. So you can check out the first link in the description. That'll take you to a school community where we basically host the different resources. Cool, guys. So that's the first automation actually done. I'm just going to go ahead and rename this automation #1 automated sales system. And once again, the whole aim of this is just to allow us to actually have that meeting system that we just built out in the previous stage automatically updated whenever a new sales call comes in. Now it's time to actually trigger the second automation. Now, the aim of this automation is just to keep our closers in check. I think that's the best way to put it. So this is basically going to trigger whenever a sales call actually happens. So not when it's booked, but when the event actually starts. When it starts, we're basically going to send a notification to our closers that has all the relevant information about the lead. So it's very, very easy for them to actually update the lead to the relevant stage, depending on the actual attributes from the sales calls. If you work with closers or even with yourself, right, it's hard to remember every single time to update a CRM and do all these different kind of things. So using something like this will make sure everyone that's actually taking sales calls updates a CRM, because if your data is out of date, then you might as well not be tracking it. This automation allows you to actually do that properly. There's a ton of different ways to do this, but I think the easiest way to actually show you to do this is using two different automations. So the first one is going to be a Calendly workflow when we're basically every single time when events end, we're going to send a follow-up email to the host, which in this case is myself, with the email of the actual lead that's booked in and the actual event type. Then we're going to set up automation within mate.com that basically scans the email on a regular basis. And if a particular email comes from Calendly with those subject lines and everything like that, that's going to trigger the automation. We're going to append the data to actually scrape the email and the event type. We're going to search for it on our database. And then we're going to go ahead and send a Slack message to the closer that's actually been assigned to it with a link to it. So it's very, very easy for them to go straight ahead and just update that particular event based on the outcome. I know that sounds like a lot, guys, but don't worry. Like with everything else in this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible for you guys. The first step to actually make this work is going over to Calendly. Now, I will say there's a bunch of different other ways to do this. If you're on GHL, I'm sure they have some sort of integration or whatever booking software you're using, so don't stress too much. For this example, we're just going to use Calendly workflows. So I'm going to go back to my Calendly account, and if I go over to workflows, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new workflow, and I'm going to create my own workflow, starts from scratch. And the trigger for this is going to be event ends. This is basically going to trigger as soon as the event ends. And what we actually want to do is send an email to the host, not the invitee, the host. You can also do a text, but it's easier to do as email, especially because remember, we're going to be using this as a trigger for the other automation. So we're going to go ahead and press next. And here's actually, we're going to set up our actual email. So this is going to apply to only our sales example. So I only want this to apply for our sales example YouTube. And let's go ahead and actually customize the email. So the subject is going to be event finished. Make sure to make this something unique, because remember, we're going to be using this as a trigger, and part of one of the filters we're going to be putting is a subject. And then for the body, I'm going to be putting email or lead email, and then enter the variable just like that, and enter the variable by scrolling down until you see the invitee email. And then we're going to put the event name as well, and once again, we're going to get that from a variable right here. Perfect. So that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and press done. And now this workflow is basically finished. So now every single time the automations are actually done, it's going to go ahead and send an email with that information to the host, which is this example myself. Now let's go back to Canonly or make.com, sorry, and set up the second automation to actually make this work properly. All right, guys. So within make.com, I've gone ahead and actually create a new scenario. And now we're going to basically set up this automation to trigger whenever we get that email from our workflow. Because remember, in a previous step, we just set up a workflow within Canonly that whenever an event ends, it goes ahead and sends the host the email, which looks a bit like this. We have the email of the actual person who booked in a call, and then we have the event name. We could also add information, but for now, we're going to leave it as that. So in order to actually trigger this whenever we actually get that email, we want to go ahead and choose email, and then for the trigger is going to be watch emails. This is basically going to be watching my inbox, and we're going to set up filters so that whenever that specific email comes in, this automation is actually going to trigger. So once you've gone ahead and actually connected a Gmail account, and once again, if you're not using Gmail or using some more other email tool, you can also do something very, very similar. But for now, let's just assume you're going to use Gmail. First, you want to select the folder that your mail is actually going to be in. In this example for us, it's going to be all mail. We don't need anything else. For the filter, you can do this for a Gmail filter, but it's a lot easier if you go simple filter, and I'll show you how. And then for the criteria, obviously you can change this if you want only read emails, only unread emails. But in this example, for me, it's just going to be all emails. Now, for the sender email address, this is where you're going to include the email address that you're actually going to get from Canonly. In this example, because I don't want to schedule an event and wait for the event to finish and so on and so forth, I'm just going to put fluxomate@gmail.com because I'm going to be sending myself an email to kind of trigger this just to speed up the process. But if you're doing this, you obviously wouldn't put fluxomate@gmail.com. You'd put the email address of Canonly, which would be something along the lines of info@canonly.com or workflow@canonly.com. It'll be something along those lines. Just check the email you get when you actually see the workflow being activated. For the subject, you actually want to make sure it matches the subject of the email we actually set up, which in our case is just event finished. Now, for the search phrase, you can filter it a step further. This basically searches the email content for specific characters or different words. In our case, we don't really need this because only emails are going to be coming in from that specific account with the specific subject is emails that we send in the actual workflow. So for now, I'm very happy with this. The maximum results, I'm going to leave it as 5. The way make.com works, which is a bit different to Zapier, is it checks it in regular intervals. So it's not as soon as the email comes in, it's going to trigger this automation. It's going to wait for those 30 minutes or 15 minutes or even 5 minutes, depends how you say it. And then it's going to check all the emails. And if there's a couple of records, they'll process them at once. If you were to put the limit to 1 rather than 5, then let's say even if you get 5 emails about finished calls within an hour or within half an hour, it's only going to process 1. So make sure you can adjust that number depending on the volume of calls you're actually having. In this example, I'm going to leave it at 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes is automation in the check. And if there's a finished call, it's going to go ahead and actually send a message. So I'm going to press OK with that. So far, so good. If I go ahead and actually run this module, we won't have anything just yet. But I sent myself an email the other day. So if I go to select from the start date, I choose Friday, for example, we should see that email that I actually sent to myself. Just like that, guys. So if we go over to the subject is only event finished, the recipient was only fluxomate@gmail.com, which once again, when you're doing this in this example, it'll be something along the lines of info@canonly.com or whatever booking software you're actually using. And if you go over to the text content, you can see that email and the event name. The next step we need to do is actually extract this information because this is how we're actually going to update that lead and make sure we make it easy for the closer to actually, press on the lead button and go straight to the specific lead. So for this, we're just going to add another step or another module, I should say. And the specific tool we're going to be using is a text parser. So I'm going to search for it here and we're going to get this bad boy right here. And if I scroll down, I want to match the pattern. Cool. Now, this obviously is going to vary depending on how you do it, but if you set up the email in the previous step and the Canonly side of things the exact same way that I show you, all you have to do is copy and paste this specific pattern within the email. This is basically going to extract the email and the event, which you'll see in a second. We'll leave the global match as no, we'll leave as case sensitive no, but we are going to allow multi-line because we're extracting both the email and the event. And for the text, we just want to enter the body. Now make sure this is not the HTML body. So if you go over to the text content, you want to select that. Don't select the HTML content, kind of work. And if you go ahead and press OK, run this whole thing, and we should see that email and the event name being extracted, hopefully. So we're just going to run the whole thing once, run anyway. As you can see right here, we extracted that testing email and the actual name of the sales call. That's perfect. Now we can actually move on to the next step, which is basically searching for that specific email within our leads database so we can actually send a link to that specific lead to our closer to let them know to actually update it. So for that, I'm going to add another step. And once again, I'm going to be using NoLoco because that's the tool where we actually set up our previous automation. Obviously, feel free to do this with whatever no code or low code internal platform tool you actually use them. And for the action is actually going to be search record. Now, if you remember and you're watching previously, when we actually set up the database for the contacts, I put one field as a primary field, which was the email. And now, if you go down to contacts, we should see that email field right here, which means we actually allowed to search for a lead by the email rather than the ID, which you don't have. So as you can see, the email is here. All I want to do is copy and paste that extracted email that we got here. And if I go ahead and press OK, I'm just going to run this module and I'll put the testing email, which is the one we had previously, and we should get an output of that specific lead, which as you can see, we got right here. This is perfect. The only thing now that we need to add to this is basically to send a message to the closer with that specific link to the specific lead. So it's very, very easy for them to come in and update it so they don't forget. And the CRM is nice and updated after every single sales call. I will say, a ton of other things you can do with this automation. For example, if you want to automatically update the lead, if you want to automatically update the meeting to finish, different things like that. But in this example, I'm just going to leave it. One thing I will say though, if you watch to the end, I'll be showing you how to take this to a whole another level using what we call Slack apps, but more information on that in a second. For now, let's just add another module. And this is going to be another Slack message in our testing channel. And if we scroll down, we're going to go ahead and create a message, similar to what we did in the previous automation, to be honest. Go ahead and choose your Slack channel. Obviously, you can send a DM to a specific closer if you'd like. But in this example, I'm just going to be sending a message within the closer channel. So I'm going to select from list, go on ahead and select in my testing channel. And for the text, all we want to do is say call with, and then enter that lead's name, which you can find right here as finished. Please update the lead card here. And then we can put I will leave as that actually. And now, similar to what we did in the previous step with the meeting side of things, we're just going to get that URL. And because the only thing that changes the URL is the unique ID, which we have right here, it'll be very, very easy for us to actually link this specific lead within the message. So if we go back to our database and we open up a random lead card, so we'll go for this one, for example, you can see it's the same URL. The only thing that changes is this specific unique ID right here, which we already have as part of automation. So I can go ahead and copy and paste this. And the only thing I'll change is delete this specific unique ID and just import it from my automation just like that. Now, once again, if you're doing this properly, I'd recommend going for blocks. If you don't know what the block kit builder is, I'll give you a quick example. It's basically where you can kind of style your message a lot more and add different things like buttons. When we talk about taking this to the next level in the next step, we're going to be using the block board a lot more. But as you can see, there's a ton of things you can do. You can basically make your app from here. They also have a ton of different templates you can just choose from. And say I wanted to use this one, and then you just basically copy and paste this code in the block builder right here just to make your message look a lot cleaner and kind of better. But for this example, we don't need to do that. And now this automation is basically finished. I'm just going to go ahead and run it to show you guys an example of what this actually looks like in real life. So let's say a call is finished. First, he's going to go through this workflow right here and send me an email. And then once that email comes in, it's going to check it on a 30-minute interval. And if email does exist, first he's going to scrape it. Then we're going to scrape the information, find the lead, and then send a Slack message in our testing channel. Which, if you open up Slack, once again, in the testing channel, we have this nice message saying, sale with test users finished. Please update lead card here. And once again, if I press this link, it's going to go ahead and take me to that specific lead card, which in this example is this lead right here, which doesn't have a name, for example. And as you can see, it's very, very easy for the closer just to press this, mark it as qualified, or even mark it as no-show, update the lead score if they want to, add a follow update, and just do different things from the close button to the follow-up button, which we're actually going to be setting up next. So guys, that's the second automation done. Now we can move on to the third automation. For the third and the fourth automation, there's two things we need to set up. Firstly, I want to make it very, very easy for the closer to actually set up a follow-up date with the lead and then send them an email, just following up from the call. And then for the fourth automation, we're going to make the transition from sales to onboarding extremely easy just by pressing a little button. Both of these automation, we're going to be utilizing the buttons that we actually set up in the first part of this video when we actually set up our internal platform. Those come in so handy. It's one of the reasons I actually love NoLoco as a platform. Now, within those buttons, we're going to be running some automations within NoLoco, which is the platform we're using, but we'll also be running some automations with Make when triggering them using different webhooks. Don't worry, it's nothing too complicated. I'll make sure to break it down as clearly as I can. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. For the third automation, we basically want to automate the follow-up. Now, this is slightly different to what we did in the previous video where we automatically followed up with the lead after X period of time. This is not what we're doing here. All we're doing here is allowing the closer to enter the database after a sales call using the automation we used in the previous step. Press a button, automatically set a follow-up date, and then we're all going to automatically send the email to the lead saying thanks for your call, blah, 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 different information. Check out these different resources, and then I'll see you, I'll be in touch with you soon. If you want to have an example of how you can actually set something up that will automatically follow up with your leads after X period of time, so let's say 2 weeks, you can check out this video right here. We did it as part of an automation challenge where we had to build out automation for one of you guys actually watching this. But for now, let's just focus on this automation right here and let's go ahead and set it up. So the first thing we need to do is go back to Noloco and set up the actual configuration for the button. So within the logo, you can see we have this follow-up button right here. At the moment, all it's doing is choosing a follow-up date, which gives us the option. I think this is automatically set in X period of time. You can go ahead and change it, press confirm, and that's going to go ahead and automatically update the follow-up date, and that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and take this to the next level. So the first thing we want to do is press the edit button, and if you go over to the action buttons, we're going to choose the follow-up, and we want to update the record. We definitely want to update the follow-up date. That's normal. But another thing I want to do is automatically updates to the follow-up stage, because if they have a follow-up date, then realistically there should be in a follow-up stage. So for this, I'm going to scroll down, and if I go over to sales stages, go ahead and select that. And if I scroll back up, and for sales stage, this is not something that I need to choose like the follow-up date. It just should update automatically to follow-up. So I'm going to change this to a hidden value, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the follow-up date. Now, if you go ahead and actually run this automation, or the specific button again, I should say, it's going to give us the option to actually update the follow-up date. And if we do, it's going to go ahead and automatically move it to the follow-up stage. This is great, already great progress, but there's one more thing I want to add to this automation, which is sending that specific lead an email, basically thanking them for the call and just sending over some free resources. Now, for this, you can use make.com, but in this instance, I'd rather use something like Noloco. Now, most no-code internal tools like Noloco have their own workflow builders, which for simple things like I'm doing right now, you can easily build off. And in this example, there's no point sending it over to make.com for no reason, so I'm going to use it to workflows. So for that, I'm going to go over to workflows, and I already created some previous ones. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a workflow, and for the specific table, it's going to be the contacts table again. So as you can see, there's different triggers we can add here when the contact's updated, when the record is created, or when it's even deleted. But for this specific trigger, we want to trigger it by action button, which in this example is going to be the follow-up button we talked about a second ago. Now, we're already updating the follow-up date and the actual stage in the previous step we just built out. So all we have to do here is basically send the email. So I'm going to go here to send the email. 2 is going to be the email of the actual lead from the trigger. The subject is going to be speak soon. Obviously, feel free to change this in whichever way you want. For the message, I recommend adding any sort of free resources you may have, and just at the end including that you're going to be in touch soon with more information. So, for example, you could put great speaking to you today, and then you can also add their name just like that. Then you could put YouTube URL #1, YouTube URL #2, or different videos. Obviously, you can even add different lead magnets similar to what you did in the previous automation, or the first automation, sorry. And then you can also add a call to action if you want, but for now, I'm just going to leave it. And that's basically going to be your email. Now, one more thing I want to do after we actually send our email, I want to send some sort of confirmation to the person that's actually, triggered a button. So for that, I'm going to add an action, and I want to send a push notification, which will basically be a notification within the app. And the message is going to be email has been sent to, and then want to include that email of the actual lead from the trigger. And for the user, we're just going to select the user who actually triggered the workflow just by going over that. Perfect. So this automation is now done. If I go ahead and tick this off, and I'll rename this just to make it really easy. Now, if I go back to the button, I'm just going to go ahead and change this specific email to my one. So now I've updated the email. If I go ahead and press follow up, it's going to ask me to actually set the follow-up date. Before we actually test this out properly, all we have to do is actually edit the action button. So if I go back to the action button in a follow-up stage, add another action, and here we just want to run a demand workflow, which is basically the workflow we created in the previous step. And then for the workflow, we're going to choose that automated pipeline contact just like that. We're going to go ahead and press done. And now I'm going to move this stage back to the book call, press the follow-up button, and here I'm going to automatically set a date, press confirm, and now we should automatically see this being updated to the follow-up stage, as well as get an email basically saying thank you for booking a call and with the different YouTube resources. So if I go to run history, you can see this was triggered a second ago. And if I go open up my email, we should see that email come in. As you can see, we have that email right here. Speak soon, great speaking to you today. And then we have the email of the actual lead. And then there's two different YouTube URLs. Obviously, this isn't formatted properly, image is missing, everything like that. But, once you set up your app properly, or your internal platform, I should say, this will look nice and clean and professional and automatically send that follow-up email. If we go back to the contact, we should also get a notification. So if I open this up, you can see I get a notification basically letting us know that follow-up email has been sent to lee@fluxomate.com, which is perfect. And that's the third automation done. This will basically allow us to create reminders to automatically follow up with our leads. Now, like I said, if you want an automation to automatically follow up with your leads after the X date or whatever like that, check out this video. This is the automation challenge, and we set up automation where after the 2 weeks or whatever day you actually set, it sends an email which is actually personalized based on information from the call. It's quite a cool automation. But for now, let's move on to the last automation on this video, which is going to be similar to the last one, but the only thing we're doing here is we're basically going to trigger this whenever a lead is closed. So when they press that close button within a CRM, and we're just making the transition from sales to onboarding as smooth as possible. So it's going to take a very, very similar approach. We're probably going to start this in NoLoco and then transfer it over to Meet.com. So let's go back to our application and let's get started. Now, if you go over to leads, we already have this close button right here, but similar to what we did with follow-up stage, let's first edit the actions that it actually needs to do. So if I go over to closed, I'm going to edit it. And at the moment, all it's doing is just updating the sales stage to close, which is all right, but there's a lot more than we actually need to update. So within this platform right now, we have projects. Each class they actually signed on, they get their own project. So one thing we have to do is actually create a project. Now, once again, you try to do as much of this on the local as possible, but then in order to actually trigger your regular onboarding process, I'd recommend moving over to Make.com. So for this, first thing we need to do is create another workflow. And for this time, it's going to be in a contacts page again. This one's going to be automated sales pipeline close. But the trigger is going to be similar to last time. It's going to trigger when the action button is actually pressed. And here we're going to add an action. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create a record. Now here we're basically going to create a project record with the specific information of the lead. So for this information here, we're going to try to get as much as possible from actual, for this information here, we're trying to get as much as possible from the actual lead card. So if we go down to the company name, for example, we can format that straight from the actual trigger. If we go down to the status, we're going to make that a dynamic value and put it as onboarding because this is a new lead actually coming in. If we go over to the start date, we can put today's date just by going relative date and then today's date. Now, I'm going to add another date. For the email, once again, we have that from the trigger of the actual email from the lead. And all these different inputs I'm putting in the trigger value is basically fields from that specific button that I'm actually pressing for the record. So let's keep on doing this for all other information. We're going to leave the assigned task, we're going to see analyze employee, but we are going to update the contact collection just by choosing the ID of the actual contact. And I think that's pretty much it. Apart from the company name, we're going to be putting the company name as the project name and then adding project just like that. So that's the first step of automation done. This is basically going to create a project which is automatically linked to the contact. The second stage of this is just basically transferring this over to Mate.com so we can actually begin initiating your onboarding process. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and add the action. And if you scroll down, we can go ahead and actually trigger a webhook. Now, if you're not familiar with webhooks, it's basically just different ways different apps communicate with each other, kind of like a signal to initiate something else. So here we need to update the webhook URL. So for this, I'm going to go back to Make.com. I'm going to go ahead and save this automation, and we're going to go ahead and create a new automation. So I'm going to create a new scenario. The trigger for this scenario will be a webhook. So all we have to do is search for webhook right here. And this is going to be a custom webhook. This is the mail hook I was talking about in the previous step if you're not using Gmail. But for now, let's focus on this. And we're just going to create a new hook. We're going to call this automated pipeline closed. Go ahead and save that. And that's going to create a nice little URL for us. If you go ahead and copy it, close this, go back to application, and we just have to copy and paste it right here. Now, as it's running, we're going to go press OK. Just run, so it's running in the background. And if we go ahead and actually test this workflow with a random contact, we should see that information load in, and you get a bunch of information from the company name, the email, the estimated value, phone number, different things like that. And here's basically where you go on and complete the different steps for your onboarding. So for example, creating a Slack channel, sending a message, all the different things that we talk about in all of our different videos to basically onboard your client. So just to show you what this actually looks like if we turn it on, for a closer, let's say they just finished a sales call, and in this example, they finished the sales call with Dr. Lou Tamata, whatever, right? And in this specific example, rather than them actually having to follow up, they are closing the lead. So rather than pressing the follow up button, they press the close button. It would ask them for some sort of confirmation. And if we press this button, all the magic should happen. So firstly, I'm just going to make sure this is running so we can actually see it coming in. And then if you go back to the sales overview, I'll go ahead and press confirm. As you can see, firstly, it's updated to closed. The next thing we should see is it creating a project and also triggering the webhook. So as you can see, it's gone ahead and actually created a project. And if I open this up, we have all the information about the lead from the name, the company name, the start date, and obviously it's an onboarding stage. And if you go over to our webhook as well, as you can see, it's triggered for that specific lead that's been coming in. And that's basically how you can automate your sales pipeline, specifically moving your lead as easily as possible from the sales process to the onboarding process. Now, obviously, for this particular automation, you need to develop it a lot more. And if you want a video going over the perfect onboarding process, you can check out this video right here to give you some inspiration. But there's a lot more things you need to do here. Your goal now is basically just to make that transition as seamless as possible from sales to onboarding to give your client the best possible experience. That's going to include sending an email, making one of your employees actually call the lead, giving some resources, buying them a gift, different things like that. Once again, much more information in the video I talked about a second ago. But guys, that's pretty much it. We've now built out 4 different automations to automate the sales pipeline, which we build on in our own internal platform. Once again, if you want to get any of the specific automation templates or resources that I talk about in this video, check out the first link in the description and it will be a digital product for free with all the different resources. Now it's time to actually move on to the next level. And what I mean by that is how to actually take this whole system to the next level. There's 5 different things I want to talk about. I didn't include them in this video because honestly, this video was a very long. And I tried to make this a beginner friendly. But if you have a bit more experience with automation or you just want to take this to the next level, these are 5 things you can actually do. The first thing is a Slack bot. Now, this is something I actually talked about how to make in a previous video. But at the moment, our Slack messages are very plain. They have a link even with the losing blocks, is nothing crazy. When it comes to a Slack bot, you can actually set different buttons. So rather than having to go to the platform and then pressing the follow-up button, you can automatically integrate that follow-up button within a Slack message, and it will look something like this, where you can automatically press that button and then can go ahead and trigger the automation rather than having that digital step to go into the platform first and then pressing the button. This is one of the many ways you can actually use Slack bots. If you're more experienced, then I really recommend doing it, and I've got a whole video on how to actually set them up in the description or in the top right hand corner. The second thing I actually recommend adding is a recording automation. So at the moment, we're obviously updating the meeting database whenever a meeting actually comes in. I'd also recommend updating the meeting database whenever a call is actually finished and you have that recording actually coming in. So you can automatically update the meeting link, and it's very easy for anyone to just open up the database, see the recording link, press it, and then go on with their day. This is a bit more complicated. It's very easy to do if you have a premium Zoom account or even something like Fireflies, which automatically transcribes the audio and does different summary points. So if you're using any of the applications, it's easy to actually set up a workflow that whenever the meeting finishes, it goes ahead and copies the URL of the actual audio file or even a video file if you have a premium subscription, copy and paste it within a database by matching it for the specific email or the meeting date or meeting name or any field like that. And then you have that recording that specific meeting automatically updated in your database. This is a game changer and just allows everything to be really organized. Third thing I add is automated end of day summary. Now, this doesn't make much sense in this system because the way I built it out, it wasn't really for different closers. But in previous video, I kind of set this up or something very similar in Google Sheets, where we had a system for different closers which automatically did end of day reports and summarize all the information so that KPIs was automatically updated. If you have different closers, there's obviously different things you need to change to the system, such as assigning calls to different people, but it's not too hard. And I would definitely recommend having some sort of automated end of day summary system for them. So it's very easy for you to automatically track their KPIs. Once again, working with closers is a bit of a headache. I haven't personally done it within my own agency, but within my partners, they have a lot of closers that they have to deal with. And getting closers to regularly update the CRM on a consistent basis is one of the most painstaking things ever. So a lot of things I showed you today, and you can do in something like automated end of day summary system, allows you to make sure you're keeping the closes in check and the CRM is being updated on a regular basis. I also have another video going on this, so feel free to check that out as well. Another thing I do is a call tracking system. Now, this is kind of related to the previous point, but the way I kind of built this system really meant for different closers to collaborate together on different calls, claim different calls, everything's like that. So there's a ton of things you can actually do to actually elevate this to the next level. But one of the things will be assigning closers to specific calls, but also allowing closers to actually take different calls if they're available. So let's say someone's already been assigned to a call, but the closer can't make it for whatever reason, he's sick. You should have a system that can automatically allow closers to just claim that call. The last thing I actually want to add is a sales KPI tracking. This is similar to the end of day reporting system, but within our different fields, we have different things like qualified, no-show. So using that information, you can kind of summarize it into a sheet or something like Looker Studio to have a really, really cool tracking of the different KPIs when it comes to your sales. For example, the qualified percentage, the for your sales cycle, close rate for your different closers, everything like that. There's so much things you can do now that you have access to all this data. And honestly, guys, this is just a starting point. I just realized my camera cut out, guys, but that's pretty much it for me. You now have a understanding of how you can actually go ahead and automate your sales pipeline. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe. Like I said, this is the longest video we've ever recorded on our channel. So if you want to see more videos like this going over how you can actually optimize the operations within your agency using different things like internal tools, automations, KPIs, and even AI sometimes, make sure to like, subscribe because we drop weekly content on how to actually do that, sharing the insights of things that are working actively within our own agency, but also within our partners' agencies. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a brand new community, which includes all the different automation templates, resources that you've seen in this video. So if you want to check that out, make sure to check out the first link in the description to get free access. Within there, you'll also be able to join our community. Now we have about 70 agency owners who are looking to set up scale-proof systems and helping each other out as they grow. Within there, you also get direct access to me and my team members. So if you have any questions about this video or any other questions about your agency operations, feel free to actually join there. Ask us any questions because we're here to actually help you out. It's also 100% free, so I don't want to sell you too much on it, but it'd be good to see you inside. And if any of that sounded interesting, then I'm sure I will. Also, guys, I will recommend don't finish your learning here. Keep on going. The platform we actually built on today was something I was recording in a previous video, which is this video right here. One of my favorite videos you ever recorded. And we basically built our project management system from scratch. So if you want to find out how we actually did that, set up different things like task management systems, project management systems, and assigning different tasks to different employees with different data permissions, then you'll find this video very, very useful. But apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. If you have any questions about anything, make sure to drop a comment below or within the community. I say this a lot, but we're a very, very small channel. So if you have any questions, we're 100% going to see it and give you an in-depth response. So don't be shy. It's been a pleasure actually recording this video. Sorry about the camera cutting out on 2 separate occasions. I'm going to try to get it fixed over the weekend. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.